welcome to Mia Horror Stories. To make it easier on your eyes, this video plays against a black screen, so you can close your eyes, get comfortable, and let the story take over. But don't relax too much, the ending might just catch you off guard. Stay with me until the very last word. The first time I noticed it, I tried to talk myself out of noticing it. That sounds backwards, but you know what I mean. You hear something wrong in a familiar song, and suddenly you can't unhear it. The fan in the corner of the room hiccups. The fridge makes a new click. The floorboard complains in a different tone than usual. And your brain does that anxious accounting thing where it starts cataloging every small deviation like it's evidence. I had one earbud in and the other ear open, the way you do when you're trying to be aware, while still pretending you're not listening for trouble. The sleep app's interface glowed a soft blue on my phone, dimmed down to the lowest setting, and on the screen, a little line of audio waveform crawled from left to right like a heartbeat. The app was supposed to be recording me. That was literally the job. Except the waveform wasn't reacting when I breathed into the mic. I pulled the phone closer to my mouth and exhaled on purpose, a warm little gust meant to nudge the microphone into acknowledging my existence. The waveform barely twitched. Then, sharp as a fingernail tap on glass, it spiked. 3 tall peaks in a row, evenly spaced, like someone had knocked on my nightstand. I froze and listened. The apartment was what it always was at 1:12 a.m. in late February. Heat clicking in the baseboards, traffic sighing somewhere far below, the building settling with slow, tired pops. A neighbor's television murmured through the shared wall in a language I couldn't place. The air smelled like the candle I'd blown out half an hour ago, cedar and something sweet that always made me think of airports. Nothing else moved. I shifted in bed, and the sheets whispered. The spike on the screen happened again, synchronized with the sound. Okay, I told myself. Motion noise, mattress springs, the phone mic picking up fabric. Explainable. I moved again, more deliberately. The waveform made nothing like those 3 clean peaks. It produced a mushy rise and fall, the kind of messy audio you expect when you roll over. I held my breath. The blue line kept crawling, indifferent. 2 seconds, 3, then 3 peaks, identical to before. Not my movement, not my breath, something else. I sat up slowly and took the earbud out. The room got louder in a mundane way: heat, traffic, neighbor TV, my own pulse thudding in my throat. I leaned over the side of the bed and looked at the narrow strip of floor between the bed frame and the wall, as if the sound could be hiding there. The spike came again, and this time I heard it, a tiny, dry sound, like the soft click of a fingernail on the phone's case. I stared at the phone. My phone was on the mattress beside my hip, screen down, because I'd read somewhere that sleeping next to a bright screen wasn't great even if it was dimmed. The app, though, was running. It didn't care if I could see it. It was listening. I picked the phone up and turned it over. The 3 peaks didn't come with any sound this time, but the line on the screen jumped anyway, as if it had caught something in the air I couldn't. My chest tightened in that familiar, embarrassing way, like my body was trying to start a sprint before my brain had agreed to the idea. I hated that about myself. I always wanted to be the person who stayed calm and gathered information. In reality, I was the person who did calm second, after the first burst of adrenaline had already made my hands unsteady. because my apartment always felt more controllable if I narrated it. I brought the phone closer to my face and watched the waveform like it might confess. A minute passed. The line stayed mostly flat, with small fluctuations that could have been anything. The heater, my breath, the neighbor's TV. My shoulders loosened. Then the screen lit up with a notification. Sleep session. Audio marker detected category. Voice confidence. 61%. I blinked at it, then tapped into the audio log. The app I was testing was called Hush Night, and the company Hushworks had hired me and a handful of other contractors to run it through real-world conditions. That was how they phrased it, real-world conditions. It sounded like something important people said in glass offices. I didn't work in a glass office. I worked in my bedroom in a third-floor walk-up in Cambridge, Massachusetts, a mile from the Charles River, with a radiator that wheezed and a window that didn't seal properly. I tested sleep apps because it was flexible, because it paid enough to cover my half of rent, and because I'd once convinced myself it would help me fix my own sleep. That last one was the kind of lie you tell yourself with a straight face for years, as if repetition turns it into truth. I tapped the voice marker. The app loaded an audio snippet from the last minute, a play button, a timestamp, 01:13:42. I held the phone like it was fragile and hit play. At first, there was only the low shush of the room, the sort of noise you never notice until it's captured and handed back to you. Then, faintly, the neighbor's TV, a bright laugh track buried behind the wall. Then my breath, close and wet in the microphone. And then a voice, not loud, not dramatic, just a voice close enough to the mic that it sounded like it was coming from inside my bedding. "Hey," it said, soft and clipped, like someone testing if you're awake. I stopped breathing. My thumb hovered over the screen, ready to pause, ready to delete, ready to do anything except keep listening. But I didn't pause it. I didn't delete it. I let it play because a part of me, the part that always ruins my life, needed to know exactly what kind of problem I had. The voice continued. "Hey, you up?" It wasn't mine. That was the first undeniable thing about it. It wasn't my cadence or my pitch. It wasn't my way of speaking. It was male, young-ish, maybe late 20s to early 30s, with that flattened, casual tone people get when they think they're being quiet. It sounded like it was in my room. I slammed the audio off and sat there, phone in hand, heart going hard enough that I could hear it in my ears. I listened to the apartment, the radiator, the traffic, the neighbor TV, nothing else. No footsteps in the hall, no door clicking, no whispering. My brain, always eager to find an explanation that didn't involve me being in danger, started stacking possibilities like boxes. App glitch, mislabeled audio, someone else's recording wrongly attached to my account, interference, Bluetooth leak, phone picking up something from the building, someone talking on a landing, someone in the stairwell, a passing voice on the sidewalk. The problem with those explanations was that I could feel the voice as much as I'd heard it. The intimacy of it, the proximity, like the microphone had been under a pillow with someone. I set the phone down on the bed and got out of the blankets. The floor was cold enough to make my toes curl. I crossed the room and flipped the light switch. The overhead bulb came on with a thin buzz, throwing hard shadows. My bedroom looked like it always did under harsh light. Unmade bed, a chair with clothes draped over it, the desk in the corner with my laptop, and 2 empty coffee cups, I'd promised myself I'd de-wash. The window was locked. I tested it anyway, pushing on it hard. It held. The bedroom door led out to the narrow hallway, and the rest of the apartment I shared with my roommate. The door was shut like I'd left it. I opened it. Hallway was dark, but the streetlight outside the living room windows spilled a watery orange glow down the hall. I could see the kitchen doorway, the edge of the couch, the line of shoes against the wall. Nothing moved. "Lena," I called softly. No answer at first, just the faint hum of the fridge. Then a voice from Lena's room, thick with sleep. "What?" I exhaled and tried to make my voice sound normal, like I wasn't standing in the hallway barefoot at 1 a.m, holding my phone like it was evidence. "Sorry, did you say anything a minute ago? Like, did you come out?" There was a pause, a rustle. "No, I'm in bed. Why?" I swallowed. "Nothing. Just sorry. You okay?" she asked, more awake now. "Yeah," I lied, because I didn't want to be the roommate who woke you up to say, I heard a mysterious male voice in my sleep app, like I was auditioning for a podcast. Lena's door opened a crack, and her face appeared in the dim hall light. Lena Morales, 29, female, wore one of those oversized college sweatshirts that swallow your shoulders and make you look like a kid again. Her hair was pulled up into a loose knot that was trying to escape. Even half asleep, she had that practical look on her face, like she was already troubleshooting whatever problem I'd brought to her. "You don't sound fine," she said. "What happened?" I hesitated, because the story sounded ridiculous as soon as it formed. It sounded like I wanted attention. It sounded like I was making it up. That was another flaw of mine. I preemptively disbelieved myself because I assumed everyone else would. But I also didn't want to go back into my room alone without saying something out loud. "I'm testing that sleep app," I said, holding up my phone. It flagged a voice recording, and it's not me. Lena stared at me for a second, then opened the door wider. "Come in." I stepped into her room. It smelled like her lavender lotion and clean laundry. She had a small, dim lamp on her nightstand that made everything soft, the opposite of the harsh overhead light in my room. Her bed was neatly made in a way mine never was. There was a paperback on her pillow, face down, bookmarked by habit. The normalcy of it made my throat tight. She sat on the edge of her bed and patted the spot next to her like we were 12 and whispering about ghosts at a sleepover. "Play it." I sat, suddenly aware of my bare feet and my stupid pulse. I reopened the app, went to the marker, and held the phone out between us. "Okay," I said. "Listen, it could be nothing." "You're shaking," Lena said, not unkindly. "I'm not," I started, then stopped, because there was no point arguing with observable facts. I hit play. We listened to the room noise, the neighbor's TV faint through my recording. Lena leaned in, her brows pinched together. Then the voice. "Hey." Lena's eyes flicked to me. The voice again. "Hey, you up?" Lena's mouth tightened. She reached out and took the phone from my hand like she needed to hold it herself to believe it. She replayed it, thumb moving with a surgeon's precision. Same thing, same proximity. She paused it and sat very still for a moment, like she was giving her brain time to catch up. "That's not you," she said. "I know," I whispered. "I know that." "Could it be?" Lena started, then stopped and tried again. "Could it be the app mixing files? Like pulling someone else's recording into yours?" "That's what I'm hoping," I said, relief flooding me because she'd offered my favorite kind of explanation, technical and solvable. She looked at the app screen, then at me. "But why would it sound like it's right there?" I didn't have an answer. I had a lot of possibilities that all felt bad. My phone buzzed again in Lena's hand. Another notification from Hush Night, this one marked as a system prompt. New feature test available. Trusted voice, profile, create a voice print to improve accuracy of sleep event detection. Lena read it aloud, then looked at me with a half laugh that didn't land. That's convenient. Yeah, I said, and it came out sharper than I meant. I took the phone back and stared at the message. A voice print. The app wanted me to record my voice, train it on me, filter out other voices. On paper, it made sense. In practice, it felt like the app was asking me to hand it a key. I'd been careful with my data since college. Not paranoid exactly, just aware. My dad had had his identity stolen when I was 16, and I'd watched the way it hollowed out his patience for months. Phone calls, letters, arguments with invisible systems. Since then, I'd collected small habits like armor. Two-factor everything, camera covers, permissions denied by default. I like to believe that if you were careful, nothing truly bad could get to you. But here I was at 1:17 a.m., listening to a strange voice in my own room, with an app gently nudging me to make it even smarter. Lena rubbed her face. Do you want me to check the hall? Like, for real? Maybe someone was on the landing talking into the stairwell. It wouldn't sound like that, I said, then regretted it, because it sounded like I was insisting on the worst version. Sorry. It sounded close. Lena stood, pulled her door open wider, and listened into the hallway with the seriousness of someone who'd grown up in a house where you checked locks twice. I don't hear anything. I got up too, because standing felt better than sitting. Maybe I should report it to Hushworks, I said, and the words tasted weird. Like telling a company, hey, your product captured a voice that may imply my safety is compromised, was something a normal person did. Lena turned back to me. Or you could call the police. I laughed, a short sound, automatically dismissive. And say what? My sleep app recorded a man saying, hey, okay, Lena said, holding her hands up. Fair, but this isn't nothing. I looked down at the phone. The message about trusted voice hovered on the screen like a suggestion from someone who didn't understand fear. In the corner of the interface, another button had appeared, upload session for review. That was the other option. Upload the recording to the company. Let them look. Let them tell me it was a glitch, a mislabeled file, a known issue. Let them fix it. Or let them store it somewhere, time-stamped and tagged with my name. I felt the tug of competing instincts, the desire to be reassured, and the desire to keep my life private, the urge to act, and the urge to pretend nothing had happened, the practical voice saying it's probably the app, and the quieter voice saying you heard what you heard. Lena watched my face. What do you want to do? I stared at the two choices on the screen, create a voice print, upload session for review, and realized there was a third choice too. Do nothing, close the app, go back to bed, and let it become a story I told myself later to explain a night of bad sleep. My thumb hovered above the screen, not touching anything yet. Okay, I said, mostly to myself. Okay, we need to pick the least stupid option. Lena nodded once, decisive. Pick one, and then we're checking your room. Lights on, together. I swallowed, and the normal apartment sound seemed to lean in, as if listening for my decision. My thumb moved toward the screen, toward the choice that would decide who else heard that voice besides us. My thumb landed on upload session for review. I told myself that was the rational choice. If this was a glitch, they needed to know. If it wasn't, They needed to explain why it was. The app asked for confirmation. This will securely transmit audio to Hushworks QA servers. There was a checkbox acknowledging that anonymized data might be retained for model training. I hesitated for half a second at that phrase, model training, then hit confirm. A thin progress bar crawled across the screen. Lena stood close enough that her shoulder touched mine. "Okay," she said quietly. "Good, that's good. Now we wait." We didn't have to wait long. My phone buzzed again before the bar even reached the end. QA response request. Urgent, a member of our team would like to speak with you about this recording. Available now. Lena and I looked at each other. "That was fast," she said. "Too fast," I said automatically, which was unfair. They were running a beta test. Maybe they had people on call for flagged audio. The message expanded with a name and a call button. Ethan Rowe, 32, male, senior audio QA specialist. Hushworks, there was also a note. We detected additional anomalous voice events in previous sessions. My stomach flipped. "Additional," Lena said, reading over my shoulder. "I didn't see any others," I said. I scrolled back through the last week's sessions. Each night showed small markers, movement, snore detection, ambient noise spike. I hadn't paid much attention beyond whether the app thought I'd slept well. And then I saw them. Nights ago, voice 0102 AM, 58% 5 nights ago. Voice 1247 AM, 63%. I hadn't clicked those before. They'd been buried under the summary graphs. "Play them," Lena said. I tapped the first one from 3 nights ago. The same low room noise. The same distant TV murmur from the neighbor. My breathing slow and even. Then something that made my jaw go tight. A voice, softer than before, almost swallowed by fabric. "Don't." Just that. One word. Lena sucked in a breath through her teeth. I tapped the one from 5 nights ago. This one was longer. A faint rustle first, like someone shifting weight. Then, "You're not as quiet as you think." I turned the audio off before it finished. My hands felt stiff. "Okay," Lena said, voice thinner now. That's not interference." "No," I said, because interference didn't have tone. Interference didn't sound amused. The phone buzzed again. "Ethan Rowe is requesting a live call." Lena nodded toward it. "Answer." I hit the green button and put it on speaker. There was a soft click, then a man's voice, professional but not stiff. "Hi, is this account holder speaking?" "Yes," I said. My voice sounded like it was coming from somewhere else. "This is me. Great. My name is Ethan Rowe. I'm with Hushworks Audio QA. I appreciate you taking the call so quickly." In the background on his end, I could hear what sounded like an office HVAC system and distant keyboard clatter. Real, not canned. "We flagged your session because the voice print confidence was inconsistent with your baseline data," he continued. "And when we cross-referenced prior sessions, we saw similar anomalies." "What does that mean?" Lena asked before I could. There was a beat. "And you are roommate," she said flatly. "Got it," Ethan said, tone adjusting just slightly. "So the app is designed to classify audio events based on acoustic features. In your prior sessions, the flagged voice events do not match the voice samples we have associated with your account from onboarding." "I never gave you a voice sample," I said. "Right," he said. "But we have metadata from your device during onboarding, some passive calibration. Nothing invasive." I met Lena's eyes. Nothing invasive didn't feel comforting. "So whose voice is it?" I asked. "That's the issue," he said. We ran it through our internal matching system. It doesn't correspond to any internal staff recordings, QA databases, or known beta participants. A small, awful thought clicked into place. You have other people's recordings, I asked. We retain anonymized samples for model improvement, he said smoothly. That's standard in this space. Okay, Lena said, cutting in. So if it's not hers and it's not someone else's in your system, what are you suggesting? Ethan exhaled. I could almost picture him rubbing his forehead. I'm not suggesting anything definitive, but the proximity of the voice to the microphone suggests it's not bleed through from an adjacent apartment. It has a high near-field acoustic signature. That means close, Lena translated under her breath. Yes, Ethan said, probably hearing her. Within roughly 1 to 2 feet of the device. My skin prickled along my arms. We need to rule out device compromise, he went on. Has your phone been out of your possession recently? Repair shops, unknown Bluetooth pairings, any new apps installed? I thought about it. I was obsessive about that stuff. No repair shops. I check Bluetooth. I don't install random apps. What about physical access? He pressed. Anyone else in your apartment? Just me and her, I said. And she didn't. I didn't, Lena said sharply. Understood, Ethan said quickly. I'm not implying that. I just need to ask. Paused, then shifted tone. There's one more thing. The waveform characteristics in the latest recording tonight's show a secondary transient before the voice. What does that mean? I asked. It sounds like a light tap on the device housing, he said. Lena and I stared at each other. We heard that, she said. Okay, Ethan said. That suggests physical contact with the phone at the time of recording. That's impossible, I said, too fast. It was on my bed, next to me. And you were asleep? He asked. I was trying to fall asleep, so conscious. Yes, and you didn't touch it? No. Silence stretched on his end for a moment, filled only by that distant office hum. Okay, he said carefully. Given the repeat occurrences and the acoustic profile, I need to escalate this internally. But I also need to advise you to secure your physical environment. What does that mean? Lena demanded. It means, he said, voice tightening just slightly, that if someone is within 1 to 2 feet of your device while you are in bed, that's not a software problem. The words landed heavy. I swallowed. Are you telling me someone's in my apartment? I'm telling you the data suggests close-range human speech near your device. It does not indicate remote injection, file corruption, or network tampering. So it's not a hack, Lena said. Highly unlikely, he replied. My brain tried to latch onto that not a hack, because at least that was impersonal. But the alternative was worse. Ethan continued, for your safety, I recommend checking all entry points. If you feel unsafe, contact local authorities. We will freeze your account data and preserve the logs in case they're needed. Preserve the logs, like evidence. Can you send us the raw audio file? I asked suddenly. Not just through the app, the actual file. There was a pause. That's not standard procedure. I'm a contractor, I said, my voice steadied, anger bleeding in where fear had been. You hired me to test this under real-world conditions. This is a real-world condition. Another pause, keyboard clicking. I can export a high-resolution WAV file and send it via secure link, he said finally. But I need to warn you, if this is part of an active security issue, distributing the file could complicate things. It's my voice, I snapped. Or not my voice. He didn't argue. I'll send the link within 10 minutes, he said. In the meantime, I strongly advise you not to remain alone. The call call ended with a soft click. For a few seconds, Lena and I just stood there in her room, the lamp casting a small circle of light that suddenly felt inadequate. "Okay," she said, practical voice back online. "We check everything." We moved through the apartment methodically. Front door first. It was locked. The deadbolt was thrown. Lena tested it twice, then 3 times. The chain was hooked. The windows in the living room were closed, but one of them, the one that never sealed properly, had a thin gap at the top. Cold air slid through it. "Could someone have gotten in?" I asked. "3rd floor," Lena said. "They'd need a ladder or to be Spider-Man." She checked the bathroom window. Locked. We opened closets, looked behind the shower curtain, under beds. It felt absurd, like acting out a horror movie checklist, but it also felt necessary. In my room, the overhead light was still on. My bed looked disturbed now, sheets pulled back where I'd gotten up. The phone sat on Lena's nightstand in the other room. I stepped closer to the bed and crouched down, peering underneath. Just storage bins, a stray sock, dust. "Nothing," Lena said behind me. I stood, brushing my hands on my pajama pants. "Okay," she said slowly. "Let's assume for a second no one's physically in here. That still leaves the voice." My phone buzzed again. An email from Hushworks. Secure link attached. I opened it and downloaded the file. The WAV icon appeared in my Files app. "Play it on the laptop," Lena said. "Better speakers." We moved to my desk. I plugged the phone into my laptop and transferred the file. The progress wheel spun too slowly for my liking. When it finished, I double-clicked the file. The audio opened in a basic media player. I turned the volume up slightly. The room noise filled the space, bigger now through laptop speakers. I could hear more detail, the radiator's uneven rhythm, a faint car horn outside. Then the tap, clearer than before. A distinct plastic-on-plastic click. Then the voice. "Hey," Lena flinched. "You up?" Through the speakers, it sounded closer. Intimate in a way that made my throat feel tight. "Zoom in," Lena said, pointing at the waveform in the player. I didn't have professional software, but I could at least drag the timeline slider. I isolated the tap and replayed it 3 times. It wasn't random. It had a cadence. Tap, slight pause, tap, tap, like someone testing whether the device was on. I felt a cold line of realization slide down my spine, not dramatic, just steady. "He knew it was recording," I said. Lena looked at me sharply. "What?" "The tap. It's like checking a mic. Like when you go, check, check." We stared at the screen. My phone vibrated again. This time it wasn't Hushworks. It was a push notification from Hush Night itself. Live session started 01:42 a.m. device. "Your iPhone," I looked at the clock on my laptop. 1:42 a.m. "I didn't start anything," I said. Lena's voice dropped. "Is the app open?" "No." I grabbed my phone. The app icon pulsed faintly on the screen. The session timer was counting up. 000008000009. "I didn't touch it," I said, backing away from the desk, as if distance mattered. "Turn it off," Lena said. My thumb hovered over the stop button. And then the waveform spiked. Both of us stared at the screen as the line jumped high and sharp. The speakers on my laptop were still active. We heard it in real time. A faint rustle. Then, barely above a whisper, from somewhere impossibly close to the microphone. "Good." Lena's hand clamped around my wrist before I realized I'd moved. The session timer kept climbing. 0000. 1600, 1700, 0018. The voice had come through the laptop speakers. But the phone was in my hand, recording, and whatever or whoever was speaking was within a foot of it, in the brightly lit room, with both of us standing there. 000019. The timer on the phone kept climbing. Lena's grip on my wrist tightened. Turn it off. I hit the stop button. The screen flickered, hesitated like the app was deciding whether to listen to me. Then the timer froze at 000024. The waveform flattened. The room felt too bright, too still. We both listened for something breathing that wasn't ours. A shift in the hallway, a floorboard, nothing. Just the radiator knocking twice in the wall and a car passing outside on Mass Ave. That was in real time, Lena said quietly. Yes, and we're both standing here. Yes, her jaw clenched. Okay, we're calling the police. I didn't argue this time. Attempt 1. External threat. The dispatcher's voice was steady and patient. Cambridge Police. I gave the address. Explained badly that a sleep app had recorded a voice inside my bedroom multiple nights in a row. That the audio suggested someone was within a foot of my phone. That a live session had just captured another voice while we were both awake and standing in the room. There was a pause on the line that stretched a little too long. Ma'am, the dispatcher said, careful and measured. Is there anyone in the residence with you besides your roommate? No. Are any doors or windows currently open or forced? No. Do you see or hear anyone inside the apartment? No. Another pause. Keyboard typing. We can send an officer to take a report, she said finally. But if there is no sign of forced entry and no visible intruder, they may not be able to do much beyond documenting the incident. That's fine, Lena said loudly, leaning toward the phone. Send someone. It took 27 minutes for the cruiser to arrive. I know because I watched the microwave clock in the kitchen like it was a countdown to something important. 1:52 a.m. turned to 2:19 a.m. in small red jumps. We waited in the living room, lights on everywhere, shoes on now. The apartment felt different, no longer ours, but a layout to be inspected. Front door. Small entry landing. Kitchen immediately to the left. Narrow hallway straight ahead leading to the bathroom on the right. Lena's room on the left. Mine at the end. I kept replaying the geography in my head. If someone had been within 1 to 2 feet of my bed, they had to be in that room. There was nowhere else. When the knock finally came, it was solid and human. 3 sharp raps. Lena opened the door to 2 officers, one older, one younger. The older one introduced himself as Officer Daniels, mid-40s, male, tired eyes, but alert posture. The younger one stayed mostly quiet, scanning the hallway behind us. We walked them through everything. I played the recordings. I showed them the timestamps. I explained the live session starting on its own. Officer Daniels listened without smirking, which I appreciated. So you're saying, he summarized, the app recorded a male voice inside your bedroom multiple times over the past week, and just now again. Yes, and you didn't hear anyone physically present at the time. No, he nodded slowly. Okay, let's check the apartment. They were thorough. They checked the front door frame for tool marks. None. They examined the window in the living room, the one with the thin gap. Officer Daniels ran a finger along the frame. This doesn't seal well, he said. Oh, Lena said, but it's 3 stories up. He leaned out slightly, peering down at the alley. There's a fire escape 2 windows over. My stomach dropped, but not connected to this window, he added quickly. And there's no sign of tampering here. They checked the bathroom vent, the hallway closet, even the attic access panel in the hallway ceiling that I'd forgotten existed. It was dusty, undisturbed. In my room, Officer Daniels crouched by the bed and shone a flashlight under it. "Nothing," he said. He stood and looked at me. "Have you had any recent conflicts? Exes, delivery drivers who lingered, anyone who might have access to a key?" "No," I said, maybe too fast. I thought about my ex from 2 years ago who'd moved to Denver. About my landlord who lived in Somerville and texted before entering. About the neighbor across the hall, a retired couple who left for Florida every winter. "No," I repeated slower. He nodded again. "Okay, here's what I'll say," he said. "There's no sign of forced entry. No physical evidence of someone being inside tonight. The audio is concerning, sure, but audio can be misleading. Acoustics in older buildings can do strange things." "Within 1 foot?" Lena asked. He hesitated. "I'm not an audio engineer, but I've seen cases where people thought someone was in their walls because of sound bleed." The younger officer shifted his weight. "Could be the neighbor upstairs," he offered. "There is no upstairs," Lena said flatly. "We're top floor," he blinked. "Right." Officer Daniels took my statement, had me email the WAV file to department address, and gave me a card. "If anything changes," he said, "call immediately. If you hear someone physically inside, don't investigate, leave and call." After they left, the apartment felt emptier than before. The official presence had evaporated, leaving only the same 4 walls and the same questions. Attempt 1 had given us nothing solid. No intruder. No forced entry. No reassurance either. And now there was a police report attached to my name, tied to something that sounded unhinged when summarized in a sentence. Attempt 2. The device by 3:10 a.m., Lena was pacing. "We're not sleeping," she said. "I wasn't planning on it," I replied. I was exhausted already. My eyes burned from staring at screens. My head felt too full, like a room with the heat turned up too high. "We isolate the phone," she said. "Rule it out." "How?" "Airplane mode. Power it down. Stick it somewhere sealed." I nodded. It was practical, concrete. We put the phone in airplane mode, turned off Bluetooth, Wi-Fi, cellular. I powered it down completely. The screen went black. "Now what?" I asked. She grabbed a mixing bowl from the kitchen and flipped it upside down on the counter. "Faraday cage, sort of." "That's not how that works," I said automatically, but I slid the powered-down phone under it anyway. We stood there, staring at an upside-down metal bowl like it was a solution. "Okay," Lena said. "Now we wait. If the voice happens again, it's not the phone." The logic was shaky, but it was something. We left the kitchen lights on and went back to my room. I brought the laptop with me. If something happened, I wanted it recorded from a second device. We sat on my bed, backs against the wall, facing the door. Overhead light was off now, only the desk lamp glowed, casting a narrow wedge across the room. At 3:37 a.m., something thumped in the hallway. We both jolted. It was heavy. Close. Lena stood first. "Stay here," she whispered. "No," I hissed. "Don't split up." The thump came again. A dragging sound. My chest tightened so hard it hurt. We stepped into the hallway together. The sound came from the living room. Another thud, followed by a scraping noise. Lena grabbed a kitchen knife on instinct. I hated that she did, but I didn't stop her. We rounded the corner into the living room. The couch had shifted. One of the throw pillows was on the floor. The thin living room window was rattling slightly in the wind, and perched on the arm of the couch, staring at us with offended yellow eyes, was a raccoon. It had somehow climbed from the fire escape to the neighbor's window, then to ours. The improperly sealed window had given just enough gap for it to nose through. It froze, then hissed softly. For a second, pure animal panic flooded my body. Then Lena exhaled a shaky laugh. Oh my God. The raccoon scrambled, claws skittering against the hardwood, and darted back toward the window. Don't let it run deeper into the apartment, I yelped. We flailed uselessly, making noise, until it squeezed back out through the gap and disappeared into the night. Silence returned. Lena leaned against the wall and laughed again, high and brittle. Okay, she said. That was not a man. No, I said, heart still hammering. Not a man. We taped the window shut, not elegantly, just layers of packing tape across the frame to seal the gap. That explains the thumping, Lena said, at least. But it didn't explain the voice. It didn't explain the tap on the phone. We went back to the kitchen. The metal bowl sat undisturbed on the counter. I lifted it. The phone lay beneath it, dark and silent. I powered it on. The screen lit up. Notifications cascaded in emails, news alerts, and one from Hush Night. Session ended 03:41 a.m. Duration 01:59:12. My blood seemed to drain from my face. That's impossible, Lena said. I turned it off, I whispered. I powered it down. The session log showed a continuous recording from 1:42 a.m. to 3:41 a.m., 2 hours. Play it, Lena said, voice tight. I scrolled to the beginning of that session. There was nothing for the first several minutes, just room noise from earlier. Then around 2:03 a.m., after the police had left, the audio shifted. Not a voice. A faint metallic click. Then the sound of footsteps, very soft, carpeted, slow, moving from the bedroom doorway toward the bed. I stopped the audio. The geography snapped into place in my head. My bedroom door, 10 feet from the bed. Hardwood floor until the rug by the bed. The rug would muffle steps. The recording captured steps crossing that exact distance. Lena's face had gone pale. We were in the living room, she said. Yes. And the phone was in the kitchen. Yes. We both looked toward the kitchen. The counter, the metal bowl, the spot where the phone had been. The audio can't be real, she said. It's time-stamped. That doesn't mean. I scrolled further. At 2:17 a.m., a whisper. So faint, I almost missed it. Still here. The words were barely audible, but they were there. And the room tone around them was my bedroom. The radiator rhythm. The slight whistle from the window seam. The phone had been under a metal bowl in the kitchen. It could not have recorded my bedroom at 2:17 a.m. unless it hadn't been under the bowl. Unless someone had moved it. My mind raced through the timeline. We depowered it down around 3:10 a.m. That meant from 1:42 to 3:10, it had been on, recording. We'd been in the living room from roughly 2:00 to 2:30 with the police. The phone had been on my desk then, not in my hand, not in my sight. The police had walked through every room. My stomach twisted. Do you think? Lena started, then stopped. I finished it. One of them. We both knew how bad that sounded, how unlikely, how dangerous to even suggest without proof. But the timing was there. The audio at 2:03. After the police left the bedroom. The footsteps toward the bed. The whisper. My skin crawled. Or, Lena said slowly, someone was already in here. The attic panel in the hallway. The dusty latch. We both turned toward the hallway ceiling. as if we could see through plaster. A small crack in the paint ran along the edge of the panel. I hadn't noticed it before. My exhaustion hit me all at once. My head throbbed behind my eyes. My body felt heavy, like I'd been awake for days instead of hours. "We can't stay here," Lena said. I nodded. Going to a hotel at 4:00 a.m. felt dramatic, but staying felt worse. I grabbed my laptop. Lena went to pack a bag. As I stepped into my room one last time to grab my wallet, something caught my eye. On my desk, near the lamp, was a small object that hadn't been there before. A white square, about the size of a postage stamp. I picked it up. It was thin plastic, with a tiny pinhole in one corner, a micro camera, not attached to anything, just sitting there. My hands went numb. "Lena," I said, and my voice came out flat. She came to the doorway. I held up the square between my fingers. Her face drained of color. "That wasn't there," she said. "No," the trap tightened. "This wasn't a glitch. It wasn't acoustics. It wasn't a raccoon. Someone had been inside my room. Someone had left something behind. And we had just told the police. We had just handed over audio logs. We had just made ourselves visible. Retreat, pretending it was nothing. Staying quiet, closing the app was no longer possible. Whoever had been here knew we knew." Lena didn't take the micro camera from my fingers. She didn't touch it at all. "Put it in a bag," she said, voice tight. "Don't smear it." "I don't have Ziploc," she snapped, already moving. She yanked open the kitchen drawer, rummaged with furious purpose, and came up with a sandwich bag like she'd been waiting her whole life to need one. I slid the little square inside. It made a tiny plastic tick against the counter, pathetic for something that had apparently turned my bedroom into a stage. My mouth was dry. My whole body felt hollowed out, like the adrenaline had burned through the top layer of me and left everything raw underneath. "We're leaving," Lena said again, but it sounded less like a plan now and more like a prayer. I nodded, grabbed my wallet, shoved my laptop into my tote, and then, because my brain apparently hates me, I hesitated. If we left, whoever had been here could come back, could take the camera, could take whatever else they'd planted, could wipe away the only concrete proof we had. "If we go," I said, "we lose the apartment." Lena's eyes narrowed. "We keep our lives." "I'm not arguing that," I said quickly. The phone buzzed on the counter. A Hushworks email. "Ethan Rowe, please do not remain in the residence. If you can, preserve the device and any physical evidence. Call authorities." Like he was in the room with us, reading the air. Lena looked at the phone, then at me. Authorities already came. My stomach tightened at the memory of Officer Daniels' flashlight beam moving across my bed, across my desk, across the exact spot where the micro camera now sat in a bag. "They didn't find anything," I whispered. "Because it wasn't there yet," Lena said. "Or because they didn't look. Or because someone wanted to be looked at without being seen." My throat closed around that thought. Lena paced, hands fisted. "Okay, we can't sleep here. We can't pretend this isn't real. If we leave right now, we're giving whoever it is ours in our place." I stared at the hallway ceiling, at the attic access panel I'd forgotten existed until tonight. The crack in the paint looked like a line drawn with a fingernail. "Attic," I said. Lena stopped pacing. "You think they're coming through there? It's the only thing that makes sense," I said, and the fact that I was saying makes sense about an intruder hiding in my ceiling made me want to laugh and throw up at the same time. Lena's voice went low. "Then we call 911 again. Tell them we found a camera. and we tell them we think someone S in the attic. I nodded. I pulled up the non-emergency email address Officer Daniels had given me, then stopped. No, I said, 911. My finger hovered over call. Then the hallway ceiling creaked. Not the settling pop of an old building, not a radiator knock, a slow, pressured sound, like weight shifting over beams. Lena's eyes locked on mine. Now, she mouthed. I hit call, put it on speaker, and kept my voice as steady as I could. Cambridge Police, the dispatcher answered. This is the same address from earlier, Lena said, cutting in before I could stumble. She gave the apartment number, then added, we found a micro camera in the bedroom. We believe someone may be accessing our unit through the attic hatch. We're hearing movement. The dispatcher asked the usual questions. Are you safe? Are the doors locked? Do you see the person? Lena kept answering, clipped and controlled, while I stood in the kitchen staring at the ceiling. Another creak, closer to the hallway. Then, faintly, a tiny scrape. Like fingernails on painted wood. Something touched the attic panel. The dispatcher's voice continued, calm and procedural, and I hated her for it. Not because she was doing anything wrong, because she sounded like the world was still normal. Lena muted the phone with her thumb and whispered, we need to get out, now, and leave the evidence. Whispered back. Bring the evidence, she said. The camera, the phone, your laptop, everything. What about the hatch, I said. If someone's up there, Lena's face tightened. We are not opening it. That was sensible. It was also unbearable, because the thought of someone above us listening, waiting, made my skin crawl. We moved as quietly as we could toward the front door. Lena kept the line open, the dispatcher still asking questions. I held the Ziploc bag with the micro camera like it might explode. Hallway felt longer than it ever had. Halfway to the door, the attic panel shifted. Just a millimeter at first, and almost nothing movement, the kind your brain would normally edit out. Then it lowered another fraction, as if someone were easing it down with care. Lena stopped dead. I stopped too, my bare feet planted on the runner rug. We both stared upward. The panel didn't fall. It didn't swing open dramatically. It lowered slowly, controlled, like someone testing whether we were watching. A thin line of darkness appeared between the panel and the ceiling. Then, so quiet it almost registered as imagination, a whisper drifted down. Hey, not from my phone, from above us. My lungs locked up. Lena's grip found my forearm and squeezed hard enough to hurt. Her face was pale, but her eyes were sharp. Back, she mouthed. We backed toward the living room, still facing the hatch, still moving like sudden motion might trigger something. The panel lifted back into place, closing with a soft click. The hallway went still again. On the speaker, the dispatcher's voice rose slightly. Ma'am, are you still there? Lena unmuted. We heard a person speak from the attic. We are leaving the apartment now. The dispatcher told us units were en route. Stay on the line. Don't confront. But we were already in confrontation just by existing under that ceiling. Lena yanked open the front door. The stairwell outside was dim and smelled faintly of old paint and someone's cooking, garlic maybe. The building's corridor lights buzzed with a cheap fluorescent wine. We stepped out into the hall and froze. Someone was coming up the stairs, not running, not stomping, a measured, unhurried climb. A shadow appeared on the landing below, then a man's head, then his shoulders. He stopped when he saw us. He was white, early 30s maybe, compact build, wearing a dark hoodie and a baseball cap pulled low. In one hand, he held a small tool pouch, something you'd see on a maintenance worker. In the other, a phone. His eyes flicked to Lena's hand, where she still held the kitchen knife. Then to my tote bag. Then back to our faces. For a moment, nobody moved. Then he lifted his phone a fraction, like he was about to speak into it, like he'd been interrupted mid-act. His mouth opened. I recognized his voice before he said anything. It was the same flattened, casual tone from my recordings. "Hey," he said softly. "You up?" My stomach dropped so hard my knees went weak. Lena stepped forward, knife held low but visible. "Don't move." The man's gaze hardened, not surprised, more like annoyed. "Put the knife down," he said, as if he were the one in control. "You're in our apartment," Lena snapped. "You've been recording her. Step back." He glanced past us, toward the open doorway behind Lena, like he was calculating distance. Like he'd done this 100 times in his head. The dispatcher on speaker, still in Lena's pocket, said, "Ma'am, who is there?" The man's eyes flicked to Lena's pocket. His jaw tightened. Then he moved, fast, sudden. He lunged not at Lena's knife, but at her pocket, at the phone. Lena jerked away, but he caught the fabric of her sweatshirt and yanked. The phone flew out and clattered down the hallway, skidding toward the stairs. The speaker went muffled, then loud again as it bounced. I reacted without thinking, diving for it. My hand closed around the phone just as it reached the top step. And then the man's boot came down on my wrist. Pain shot through me, sharp and immediate, like a bright line drawn from my hand up my arm. I yelped and tried to pull back, but his weight pinned me. Lena shouted and swung the knife not at him, but at his leg, a warning slash that grazed denim. He cursed and jerked away, just enough for me to wrench my wrist free. The phone stayed in my hand. The man's face changed then. The calm mask slipped. "You didn't have to make it like this," he hissed. Lena's voice was loud now, echoing in the stairwell. "Get away from her." The man glanced down the stairs, up the stairs, like he was deciding which direction was safer. Then he darted sideways past us toward the open apartment door. "No," I shouted, and it came out ragged. He slammed his shoulder into Lena, knocking her back a step. She caught herself on the doorframe, knife still in hand, but he was already inside. The apartment swallowed him in orange streetlight and lamplight. Lena looked at me, eyes wide. "Don't go in," she said. But if he got back into the apartment, he could grab the micro camera bag. He could grab the phone under the bowl if he'd moved it. He could run through my room and erase whatever trail he'd left. My private fear, losing control of my own data, my own proof, flared into something bigger, uglier. The fear that he'd get away with it, because everything he'd done lived inside devices, inside logs, inside places people dismissed. I pushed past Lena. We entered the apartment together. Lights still on, and bright. Living room lamp casting soft shadows. The hallway ahead was dark beyond the spill of light. "Hey," Lena shouted, voice shaking now. "We called the police." A laugh came from deeper inside, quiet, almost amused. "Yeah," the man said from somewhere in the hallway. "I know." We edged forward, using the wall for cover, moving slow because fast felt like a mistake. My wrist throbbed, and I couldn't fully bend my fingers. From the kitchen, I could see the hallway ceiling. The attic panel was closed. Innocent looking. Then the panel shifted again, not downward this time, upward, as if someone had pushed it from below to create a gap. Lena saw it too. "There's someone else," she breathed. My mouth went dry. That's when the living room window taped shut made a soft tearing sound. The tape lifted at one corner, not because of wind, because fingers were peeling it from outside. A silhouette moved behind the glass, framed by streetlight and darkness. Lena's eyes went huge. "Back door," she whispered. Now, we didn't have a back door, just the front door and windows. 3rd floor. The silhouette outside pressed closer. A hand slid along the frame. A second person, or the same one circling faster than physics should allow. My brain tried to keep up and failed. In the hallway, the man's voice spoke again, closer now, like he'd stepped out of hiding. "Don't do this," he said. "Just give me the phone." "What do you want?" I managed. A pause. A small exhale that sounded irritated. "Your recordings," he said, like it was obvious. "The logs, the upload." My stomach turned. "You work for them," I said. He didn't answer that directly. He didn't have to. "I don't want to hurt you," he said, "but you're making it hard." Lena lifted the knife again, hands trembling. "Stay back." He stepped into view at the end of the hallway, near the bathroom. Close enough that I could see his face clearly now. Evan Mercer, 33, male. His name was stitched onto a small badge clipped to his pouch. The kind contractors sometimes wear when they've been on a job site too long and forget it's still there. His eyes were bloodshot with exhaustion or adrenaline. His mouth was set in a line that looked practiced. "Evan," Lena said, voice sharp. "Leave now." He smiled, humorless. "You don't get it." The attic panel above us creaked again. Dust sifted down like dry snow, glittering in the kitchen light. Someone was up there, watching. My pulse hammered so hard it made my vision blur at the edges. The dispatcher's voice crackled from the phone in my hand, somehow still connected, still open. "Ma'am, officers are arriving. Stay on the line." Evan's gaze flicked to the phone. His expression sharpened. He lunged. Lena swung the knife. This time it landed, slicing his forearm. A thin line of blood appeared instantly, bright under the light. Evan swore and backhanded Lena hard across the face. The sound cracked through the apartment like a dropped plate. Lena stumbled, hit the kitchen counter with her hip, and went down, gasping. The knife clattered on the tile. "Lena," I shouted. Evan reached for me. I backed up fast, my heels slipping on the tile. I grabbed the first thing my hand found on the counter, an empty glass jar from the recycling, and hurled it. It hit him in the shoulder, shattered, and glass skittered across the floor. He flinched, more surprised than hurt. And in that half second, I did something stupid and desperate. I bolted for the hallway. Not to run past him, but to my bedroom. Because the micro camera bag was on my desk. Because the only thing I could control was evidence. My feet slapped the hardwood. My wrist screamed with each jolt. I heard Evan's footsteps behind me, heavier now, angry. I reached my bedroom door and slammed it. No lock. Of course, no lock. I shoved my chair under the handle as a wedge, the cheap wood scraping. Evan hit the door once hard. The chair shifted but held. "Open it," he said, breathing hard. "Open it or I'm coming through." I grabbed the Ziploc bag with the camera and stuffed it into my tote. My hands shook so badly the zipper fought me. Evan hit the door again. The chair slid a few inches. I looked around wildly. Window. Fire escape wasn't on my side, but if I leaned out, I could see the neighbor's fire escape across 2 windows in the living room. Not reachable from here. Closet. Under bed. No, the attic. My eyes snapped to the ceiling. In the corner of my bedroom, I saw something I hadn't before. A faint line, a seam where plaster met a panel I'd assumed was just design. A smaller access point, maybe a crawlspace connection. My mouth went dry. Evan hit the door a 3rd time. The chair buckled. It wasn't going to hold. I did the only thing I could think of. I grabbed my desk lamp and smashed it upward hard into the seam. Glass shattered. The bulb popped. Darkness flared and then settled, leaving only the spill of light from the hallway under the door. I hit again. The seam cracked. Dust rained down. A panel gave. Not wide, not easy, but enough for fingers. Something moved above it immediately. A shift. A breath. Not Evan's. A hand appeared in the gap, dirty knuckles, short nails, skin scraped raw. It reached down toward me like a reflex. I recoiled, heart seizing. A face pressed to the opening for a split second, eyes wide, startled, as if the person up there hadn't expected me to look back. Then it vanished, retreating into the dark. The door behind me splintered. Evan forced his shoulder through. He saw the broken ceiling panel, the dust, the movement that had just happened. His expression changed, fear flickering beneath anger. "Stop," he said, not to me, upward. "Stop. Get out." So there really was another person. Evan stepped into the room, eyes darting between me and the ceiling. "Give me the phone," he said again, but his voice had lost some of its certainty. "Please." I held it tighter. My wrist throbbed. I tasted copper in my mouth from biting my tongue. In the hallway behind him, Lena's voice rang out, broken but fierce. "Cambridge police. They're outside." Whether she was lying or not, it worked. Evan's head snapped toward the hall. He hesitated. That was all I needed. I rushed him not to fight, but to get past. Shoved my shoulder into his injured arm. He cried out and grabbed at me. His fingers caught my tote strap, yanking hard. The strap dug into my shoulder. I stumbled, almost went down. Evan pulled. I pulled back. The tote tore at the seam with a ripping sound. My laptop slid halfway out. I let it go. The tote fell apart, spilling my things: lip balm, charger, notebook, the Ziploc bag tumbling across the floor. The micro camera skittered under the bed. I lunged for it, but Evan was faster. He dropped to one knee, reached under the bed, and grabbed the bag. "Got it," he said, breathless, triumphant. Then the ceiling above us groaned, a heavier sound, weight shifting. A board creaked under pressure. Evan looked up. Something dropped. Not a person. Not yet. A small black pouch fell through the broken panel and hit the floor with a thud. It looked like a tool bag. It unzipped on impact, spilling out a tangle of wires, a battery pack, and my stomach clenched. 2 more micro cameras. Evan stared at it like it was a dead animal. He hadn't planned for that. He hadn't wanted that scene. I didn't think Evan was the one who'd placed the cameras. I thought he was the one trying to retrieve them, because someone above us had just lost control of their stash. Evan's eyes flicked to me, to the cameras on the floor, to the hallway. He made a decision. He ran. He bolted out of my room, down the hallway, toward the front door. Lena, standing unsteadily near the kitchen with one hand pressed to her cheek, moved to block him. He shoved her aside hard, and she hit the wall with a choked sound. I chased after him, wrist screaming, throat raw from breathing too fast. In the living room, the taped window finally tore open. A figure outside, hooded, face obscured, yanked at the window frame, trying to force it. Evan saw the figure and flinched like he recognized them. He didn't go toward the window. He went for the front door. He threw it open and nearly collided with Officer Daniels. Officer Daniels' flashlight beam flooded the entryway. Behind him, another officer had a hand already on their holster. "Hands," Officer Daniels barked. "Hands where I can see them." Evan froze, then lifted his hands slowly, blood on his sleeve. Officer Daniels' gaze flicked past him, into the apartment, taking in the shattered jar, the scattered glass, Lena's bruised cheek, me in the hallway with my wrist limp at my side. "What the hell happened?" Daniel snapped. "Attic," Lena choked out. "There's someone." A heavy thump sounded overhead, nearer now, like someone moving fast across joists. Officer Daniel's head snapped up. "Back up," he ordered. But it was too late for backing up. The attic panel in the hallway outside my room finally gave way completely. It didn't open gently this time. It dropped. A man fell with it, hard, uncontrolled, landing on the hallway floor in a tangle of limbs and drywall dust. He was older than Evan, mid-40s maybe, gray stubble, workman's hands, a cheap headlamp still strapped around his forehead. For a split second, the whole apartment went still. Then the man scrambled, trying to regain his feet. Officer Daniels moved faster than I thought he could. He tackled him into the wall with a brutal, efficient slam. The man shouted, panicked and animal, trying to twist free. Officer Daniels pinned him, cuffed him, and barked at the other officer to secure Evan too. Evan didn't resist. He just stood there breathing hard, eyes fixed on the older man like he hated him and feared him at the same time. The older man spat drywall dust and glared at us. Calvin Rusk, 46, male, his name came later, from his ID and from the landlord's paperwork. But even in that moment, you could see the kind of person he was. Someone who'd spent a long time believing other people's homes belonged to him if he could get into them quietly enough. Officer Daniels hauled him upright. "Do you live here?" Daniels demanded. Calvin's lips curled. "No." "Then why are you in the attic of this building?" Calvin's eyes slid toward me, toward my phone, toward the cameras on the hallway floor. He said nothing. Evan's voice came out strained, almost pleading. "It wasn't supposed to be like this." Lena laughed once, sharp and broken. "No kidding." My knees went weak. The adrenaline drained so suddenly, I had to grip the wall to stay upright. The dispatcher's voice still crackled faintly from my phone, like an echo of how long it took the world to catch up. Officer Daniels looked at me. "You're hurt." "My wrist," I said, and when I tried to flex it, pain flared bright and nauseating. He nodded at the other officer. "EMS. Now." Lena sank onto the couch, one hand still pressed to her cheek, eyes glassy with shock. "He hit me," she said, almost like she couldn't believe the words belonged to her. Officer Daniels' face hardened. "Document everything." Calvin thrashed once in his cuffs. "You don't know what you're talking about," he snarled at Daniels. This is nothing. This is just nothing," Lena's voice cracked. She gestured shakily toward the cameras, toward the broken ceiling, toward me. "You were in our ceiling." Calvin stared at her with flat contempt. Evan's gaze dropped to the floor. "I tried to get them back," he said, quieter now. "I told him to stop. I told him." "Who is he?" Officer Daniels demanded. Evan swallowed, eyes darting. "Maintenance. Contractor. He works for." He stopped, as if the name itself was dangerous to say. My phone buzzed in my hand. A Hushworks notification. "Account data preservation confirmed. Upload complete." The world narrowed. My heartbeat pounded in my ears. Evan saw the notification light up my screen. His face went blank, then tight, like someone had just closed a door he'd been trying to keep open. He whispered, almost to himself, "Too late." Officer Daniels' gaze flicked to the phone, then back to Evan. "What is that?" I swallowed. "The sleep app, the recordings. I uploaded them." Officer Daniels' expression darkened. "Good, we'll need that." Calvin lunged forward in his cuffs, trying to get closer, eyes wild. "You shouldn't have," Officer Daniels shoved him back. It was over in the sense that men were in handcuffs, and the hallway was filled with uniforms, and the building suddenly felt small and controlled again. But it wasn't over in the way my body understood. My bedroom door hung splintered. My ceiling was broken. My things were scattered. My wrist was swelling. Lena's face was already bruising. And somewhere inside my phone, inside servers I didn't control, there were now hours of audio. My sleep, my room, my life. The paramedics arrived and wrapped my wrist, and when they lifted it gently, I almost blacked out from the pain. They told me it might be fractured. They told me I'd need X-rays. Lena refused the ambulance. She insisted she was fine, even as her voice shook. She insisted on staying with me. Officer Daniels took photos of everything: cameras, ceiling panel, tool pouch, blood on Evan's sleeve, glass on the tile. He spoke in that steady cop voice, but his eyes kept drifting upward, as if he still didn't like the idea of what had been above us. As they led Calvin out, he turned his head toward me and smiled. Not triumphant, not even angry, just familiar. Like he'd been in my space, so long he felt entitled to one last look. The sound he made was barely audible, swallowed by the hallway noise and the officer's commands. But I heard it anyway. A soft, clipped whisper. Hey. And even with him in cuffs, even with flashing lights outside, my body reacted like the word had fingers. The ER was fluorescent and beige in a way that made time feel like it had been scrubbed down. Everything smelled like sanitizer and warmed plastic, the kind of place where your body is suddenly not yours anymore. Your name becomes a wristband. Your pain becomes a number you're asked to assign, like a rating for a restaurant. My wrist had ballooned by the time we got there. The paramedics had wrapped it tight, but the swelling pushed against the gauze until my fingers felt thick and unfamiliar. Lena sat beside me in the waiting area, her sweatshirt stained with dust from the ceiling and a faint smear of my blood where she'd grabbed my hand without thinking. Her cheek had started to bruise in a neat arc along her jaw. She kept touching it like she didn't trust it to still be there. We didn't talk much. We watched other people exist in smaller emergencies: sprained ankles, coughing, a kid with a nosebleed who looked bored. It was almost obscene, the normalcy of it, how the world could keep rotating while my bedroom was full of glass and tiny cameras and strangers in cuffs. A nurse called my name, and we followed her down a hallway lined with curtained bays. Nina Choi, 34, female, introduced herself with the practiced warmth of someone who'd learned how to be kind without being consumed by it. She had a pen clipped to her scrubs, hair pulled back tight, and the calm eyes of a person who'd seen worse injuries than mine and still respected them. She checked my vitals, asked about allergies, then gently unwound the wrap around my wrist. When she touched the underside, I hissed. "Okay," Nina said softly, not apologizing, just acknowledging. "We'll get X-rays. Any head injury? Did you lose consciousness?" "No," I said, "just got stepped on." "Stepped on," she repeated, as if she were testing how normal that sounded. Lena's voice came out rough. "Someone broke into our apartment." Nina didn't widen her eyes or ask for details. She just nodded once like this fit inside the category of things that happen at night. "X-ray first," she said. "Then we'll talk." The imaging room was cold. The technician positioned my arm in ways that made my stomach clench. Each click of the machine sounded like a punctuation mark. Afterward, we were led back to bay. A doctor arrived with a tablet in his hand, scanning images. Dr. Graham Patel, 41 male, had tired eyes and a gentle mouth, the kind of face that made you feel like he'd tell you the truth without dramatizing it. He didn't waste time. "You've got a distal radius fracture," he said, tapping the image. "It's not wildly displaced, which is good, but it is a break. We'll splint it now. You'll need ortho follow-up within a week. You'll be sore." "Sore," Lena repeated, and her laugh was small and brittle. Dr. Patel looked at her bruised face. "And you?" "I'm fine," Lena said automatically. He didn't argue. "If you develop a headache, nausea, vision changes, come back. Being hit can surprise you later." While Nina wrapped my arm in a stiff splint, Lena sat on the edge of the plastic chair and stared at the wall like she was trying to memorize it. I wanted to say something comforting, something that would make the night feel like a contained event with a beginning and an end. Instead, I said, "We should call your mom." Lena's eyes flicked to me. "No." "Okay," I said, because pushing was the wrong move. I knew that. When we left the ER, dawn was starting to bleed into the sky, a thin gray light that made the city look washed out. The air outside had that damp, cold smell that always made me think of subway tunnels and wet wool. We didn't go back to the apartment. We went to a hotel off Memorial Drive that smelled like carpet shampoo and coffee. The desk clerk didn't ask questions beyond, "ID, please." The elevator music was low and cheery, insultingly so. In the room, Lena locked the door, then locked it again, then put the chair under the handle like she'd seen it in a movie and hated herself for doing it. I sat on the bed, splinted arm resting on a pillow, and watched her pace. At 7:13 a.m., my phone buzzed again. Not a text, an email. Detective Unit request for contact. There was a name and a number. A case reference. I stared at it until the letters stopped blurring. Lena stopped pacing. "What?" "Detective," I said. She exhaled hard, then nodded once, as if she'd expected this. "Call." I put it on speaker. "Detective Laura Mendel," a voice answered, crisp and controlled. Are you the caller from earlier? The apartment on?" "Yes," I said, and gave the address again because the night had turned it into a mantra. Laura Mendel, 38, female, introduced herself like someone who'd been awake too long and was staying sharp out of stubbornness. She didn't soften her tone for me, but she wasn't unkind either, just direct. "We recovered 2 individuals," she said. "One is in custody under burglary-related charges, assault, unlawful surveillance. We're still sorting the exact list. The second individual, Evan Mercer, has not been released. He's being held for questioning as well." My jaw tightened at Evan's name. "We also recovered multiple recording devices consistent with what you described," Mendel continued. "We're getting a warrant to search the apartment fully and to examine any seized electronics." "Electronics?" Lena asked. "We took phones, a tool pouch, and a bag with batteries and miniature cameras," Mendel said. "We'll need your cooperation to access anything relevant from your devices as well, including that sleep app." I felt my stomach turn. Mendel's voice stayed practical. "I know it's unpleasant, but the recordings may establish timeline and intent." I glanced at Lena. She looked like she'd turned to stone. "I uploaded the audio to the company," I said. "Hushworks, they have logs." There was a pause. "Okay, we'll need a contact there," I swallowed. "I have someone, Ethan Rowe." "Send me his details," Mendel said. "Also, did you see anyone else?" The question landed like a weight. There was a silhouette at our living room window, I said slowly. Someone outside peeling the tape. Lena cut in, voice tight. We don't know if it was a second person or understood, Mendel said. We're canvassing the area, but I want to be upfront. If that person left before officers arrived, we may not identify them unless we get good footage or a witness. Footage. My mind went to doorbell cameras on neighboring buildings, traffic cams, the cities in different eyes. Mendel gave us instructions. Don't return to the apartment until forensics clears it. Keep the micro camera evidence chain intact. I told her it had been seized. Write down everything we remembered while it was fresh. Then she said, one more thing. Your landlord or building management, do you know if anyone has legitimate attic access? Lena and I looked at each other. No, Lena said. We didn't even know there was an attic. Okay, Mendel replied. We'll be contacting the owner. If you remember any maintenance visits, strange noises, anything, call me. When the call ended, the hotel room felt smaller. Lena finally sat down at the edge of the bed. Her hands were shaking. She tried to hide it by folding them together. I keep thinking, she said, voice low, how he said it like a joke. Hey, I said quietly. She nodded, like we were the weird ones for being awake. I stared at my splinted wrist. The skin under the wrap itched. My fingers were swollen stiff. A stupid injury for a night that felt so much bigger. Around noon, my email pinged again. Hushworks. Ethan Rowe, 32, male, wrote in clean, professional lines, as if composing a memo in a calm office made this manageable. He confirmed that the upload was preserved, time-stamped, and that they could provide an export of all session metadata and associated audio markers. He also wrote, in a way that made my stomach drop, we are initiating an internal review to ensure no employee or contractor misused access to test infrastructure or customer data. No employee or contractor. I pictured Evan's tool pouch, his badge, his voice saying, just give me the phone. I forwarded Ethan's email to Detective Mendel. Then I stared at the screen until my eyes hurt. The rest of the day was logistics. Ugly, exhausting logistics. Mendel called back to tell us the apartment had been cleared for a brief supervised visit, 10 minutes, to retrieve essentials. Officer Daniels would accompany us. A forensic tech had dusted surfaces, photographed the damage, collected remaining devices. They'd found 2 more micro cameras wedged behind my bookshelf and taped under the bed frame. The phrase under the bed frame made my stomach turn because it meant someone had been close enough to kneel beside where I slept. We returned just before sunset. Officer Daniels met us outside the building. He looked more tired now than he had in the early hours. He held himself like someone trying not to show regret. I'm sorry, he said, and it sounded real. For what? Lena asked, too sharp. He didn't flinch. For the first time, for not taking it more seriously. We see a lot of things that sound strange, but your situation wasn't nothing. Lena's jaw tightened. She didn't forgive him out loud. Neither did I. We climbed the stairs slowly. My wrist throbbed with each step. Every sound in the stairwell felt amplified. A door closing in another unit made me flinch. Inside the apartment, everything looked the same and ruined at once. The hallway ceiling was patched with a temporary board. My bedroom door had been replaced by a cheap hollow core slab with a new knob, installed by someone in a hurry. It didn't feel like protection. It felt like pretending. My desk was cleared. The spot where the micro camera had appeared was empty. A forensic evidence marker sticker clung to the corner. Officer Daniel stood in the hallway and watched us, hands visible, giving us space without leaving us alone. Lena walked to the living room window and touched the tape residue with her fingertip like she couldn't resist confirming it had been real. Her finger left a clean line through dust. I went to my room and grabbed clothes, my passport, a couple of notebooks. The mundane items felt strange, as if they belonged to someone who'd never been hunted by a whisper. On the floor near my bed, there was still a tiny sparkle of glass from the jar I'd thrown. It caught the light from the desk lamp. The sight of it made my throat tighten. "Anything else?" Officer Daniels asked gently. My eyes landed on the attic seam I'd smashed open. It had been patched too. Fresh drywall, still lighter than the ceiling paint. A scar. I felt a ridiculous urge to climb on the bed and press my ear to it, to listen for a breath. I didn't. "We're done," I said. We left. 2 weeks later, life pretended to restart. My wrist healed slowly. The ortho cast it properly, then swapped it for a brace. I learned how much of my day relied on 2 hands opening jars, carrying groceries, washing my hair. The inconvenience was almost insulting. Like my body had chosen the most mundane way to register trauma. Lena moved out. Not dramatically, not with screaming, with quiet decisiveness. "It's not you," she said the day she packed her car. I can't sleep there. I can't even walk down that hallway without hearing him." "I know," I said, and meant it. She hugged me awkwardly, careful of my wrist. She left me a note on the kitchen counter in block letters. "Please check your windows. Please don't dismiss your gut again." I taped it inside my new planner like it was a warning label. Detective Mendel called with updates in short, unromantic bursts. Calvin Rusk had prior charges: trespass, minor theft, nothing that would have kept him off a contractor list if someone didn't look too closely. He'd been hired through a subcontractor for building maintenance. The landlord, under pressure, and suddenly very polite, claimed ignorance. They were pursuing additional charges under unlawful surveillance statutes. They had enough to hold him. Evan Mercer, meanwhile, was complicated. Mendel didn't say that word, but I heard it in what she didn't say. "He says he was trying to stop it," she told me. "That he discovered the devices and panicked when you uploaded the logs. He admits he returned to retrieve evidence. He admits assault. He denies placing cameras." "And you believe him?" I asked. A pause. "I believe he knows more than he's saying." "What about the person at the window?" Lena asked, because she insisted on being on speaker for that call, still orbiting my fear even after she'd moved out. "We don't have a positive ID," Mendel said. "We have a partial figure on a neighbor's camera, hood up, face not visible. Could be a third party, could be Calvin alone earlier in the night. We can't confirm." The subtle thread stayed loose, not dramatic, just unresolved. At the end of that call, Mendel said, "One more thing. Your app company, Hushworks, cooperated. They provided logs. There's no indication of remote injection, but the recordings confirm repeated near-field voice events and movement consistent with what you described. That helps us. My sleep had become evidence. Hushworks sent me a final email, a polite termination of my contract, dressed up as pause in beta testing requirements. They offered a small bonus for extraordinary circumstances. They asked me to sign an updated NDA. I didn't sign anything. My lawyer, an exhausted woman my friend recommended, told me not to. Hushworks didn't push after that. They went quiet, which was almost worse, because quiet is where you start imagining what else they're hiding. I moved too, eventually. Not far, still in Massachusetts, but not that building, not that streetlight, not that hallway ceiling. On my first night in the new place, I did what I'd sworn I wouldn't do. I downloaded a different sleep app. Not Hush Night, not Hushworks. A basic one that claimed to track snoring and movement, nothing more. I told myself it was for routine, for normalcy, for the science of it, for proof that I wasn't crazy. I placed my phone on my dresser across the room, not on the bed. I triple-checked the locks. I checked the windows. I checked the closet, even though that was ridiculous. Then I lay down and stared at the ceiling until my eyes blurred. The building made its own sounds. Pipes, a distant elevator, someone's footsteps in a hallway I didn't know yet. Eventually, exhaustion won. Not peaceful sleep, just shutdown. In the morning, the app gave me a neat little graph and a number score, like the night had been a math problem. There was one audio marker. Voice 03:06 a.m. 22% my stomach dipped so hard I had to sit down. My fingers shook as I tapped it. Static, a muffled rustle, my own breath. Then faint, far away, like from another apartment, like from a hallway, a man's voice, laughing at something on television. Explainable, normal, not close. I let the recording play anyway, because my body needed to hear the whole thing before it could relax. It ended. The app asked if I wanted to improve accuracy by creating a trusted voice profile. I stared at the prompt for a long time. Then I deleted the app, not because I thought it would save me, not because I believed technology was evil, just because I couldn't stand the idea of my sleep becoming something that could be stored, tagged, reviewed. I opened the window a crack and let in cold air, the honest kind, the kind that didn't come with permissions. Outside, someone's dog barked once, then stopped. A car door shut. A person laughed. The world moved on, careless and alive. I sat at the edge of my bed and listened until my breathing matched the room. When I finally turned off the light, I didn't feel safe, but I felt awake in a way I hadn't been before, awake to how thin the line is between your private life and somebody else's access. And that line, once seen, doesn't disappear. It just becomes another sound you can't unhear. That's it for this nightmare. If you enjoyed it, please like the video, subscribe to Mia Horror Stories, and turn on notifications. It really helps keep the stories alive. And don't stop here. Dive into another one of our videos and keep the fear going. You're listening to Mia Horror Stories, and today's story is My Smart Doorbell Keeps Detecting Someone Standing Just Out of View. The screen will stay completely black, letting your imagination do all the work. No visuals, no noise, just a story that creeps under your skin. Don't skip a second, because every detail builds to the chilling end you won't want to miss. At first, I thought it was a bug. My phone buzzed on the kitchen counter, screen lighting up the underside of a mug ring and the crumbs I hadn't wiped. The little banner at the top said, "Person detected front door." It had a thumbnail underneath it, washed out and grainy in that familiar night vision way. There was no person in the frame, just my porch, the square of welcome mat that still said hello, even though the letters were fading, the package bench I'd assembled wrong so one leg wobbled, the edge of the railing. The image stopped because the clip ended and then looped again. The motion was real because the infrared made the moths look like sparks, and a leaf skittered along the concrete and spun itself against the step. But the banner had been confident. Person detected. I set my dish towel down and leaned over the counter until my hair brushed the screen, like proximity would reveal a trick. I scrubbed back and forth through the clip with my thumb. At the very top right corner, just barely, there was a sliver of something. A curved, dark shape that could have been the edge of a jacket shoulder, or the side of a trash bag caught on the post, or a shadow. The dog's nails clicked behind me. He paused at the threshold between living room and kitchen, like he was asking if this was one of those things that was about to turn into work. His head tipped, one ear up. "Buddy," I said, without taking my eyes off the screen. "Don't start." He didn't bark. He just watched me. The microwave clock read 8:14 p.m. The house smelled like lemon dish soap and the last of the cold air that had slid in when I let Buddy out an hour ago. The old baseboard radiator ticked once, a polite mechanical sound like it wanted credit for still being alive. I hit live view. The porch appeared again, wider, with the fisheye curve at the edges. The street beyond was calm. A few houses down, someone's porch light was on. A car rolled by slowly, tires hissing on the wet pavement. My own porch light cast a soft cone that made the railing look oddly theatrical. No one stood there. No one moved. I turned the volume up. All I got was the wind in the mic, and faintly, the low hiss of traffic from the avenue. Buddy's breathing filled the kitchen behind me, wet and rhythmic. I picked up the pepper spray from the key bowl because my hand wanted something to do. It was the size of a lipstick tube and lived there because I told myself that was sensible, not anxious. Then I walked to the front window anyway, because what else do you do when your phone insists there's a person at your door? The curtains were a cheap linen I'd bought online, the color described as oatmeal. Up close, they were the color of Band-Aids. I pulled one edge back with 2 fingers and pressed my forehead against the cold glass. The porch was empty, but when I leaned a little to the right, toward the hinge side of the door, I couldn't see the whole thing. The door frame blocked a narrow strip where the camera's angle also seemed to give up. A blind spot that existed because nothing is as all-seeing as the marketing makes it sound. I stood there for a beat too long, trying to force my eyes to see around an angle that didn't exist. Buddy made a soft whining sound, and then, finally, one short bark, like he couldn't help himself. "Yeah," I muttered. "I know." The phone buzzed again before I could let the curtain fall back. Person detected, front door. This time, the thumbnail showed a little more of that upper right corner. A larger curve now. Dark, matte, stationary. My stomach didn't drop exactly. It tightened, like my body was bracing for embarrassment. I could already picture myself calling someone and having to explain I was spooked by a doorbell notification. Maybe it was the motion algorithm mistaking the porch post for a leg. Maybe the neighbor's kid was cutting across my lawn and the camera was catching his backpack at the edge. Maybe it was a raccoon that had learned to stand. The list of reasonable explanations arrived fast, like it had been practicing. My name is Nina Calder. I'm 31, and I live alone in a small rented house on the edge of a river town in upstate New York. I moved here 8 months ago for a job I told people was a step forward, and for a fresh start I didn't admit was actually running. I don't like surprises. I never have. I'm the kind of person who rereads emails before sending them, who checks the lock twice, not because I think someone is out there, but because it quiets the part of my brain that can't tolerate unfinished loops. That part of my brain was very loud right now. I grabbed my keys and slipped my feet into sneakers without tying them. Buddy shoved his head against my thigh, a hard insistence. "No," I told him. "You're staying." He whined again, more offended than scared. I clipped on his leash anyway. It wasn't bravery, it was math. If I opened the door and someone was actually there, I wanted the dog between me and them, and I hated myself a little for thinking it. The entryway light had a flicker I'd meant to fix. It buzzed faintly, a mosquito sound. I opened the closet and pulled out the short aluminum bat I kept behind the vacuum. I bought it after my last apartment, after the broken window and the insurance adjuster, and the neighbor telling me casually that things happen. My private fear isn't ghosts or monsters. It's men who decide you're convenient. I stood with my hand on the doorknob and watched the live view again. Nothing. The porch was still empty, except for the wobble bench and the welcome mat and the corner that remained stubbornly hidden. I took a breath, counted like I'd been taught in therapy, 4 in, hold, 6 out, and then unlocked the deadbolt. The bolt slid back with a metallic clack that sounded too loud in my own hallway. I opened the door a few inches. Cold air slipped in. It smelled like damp leaves and someone's wood smoke. Buddy leaned forward, nose working hard, body tense. His tail was straight out, not wagging. Nothing stood on my porch, but the space just out of view, past the door frame, past my angle, felt occupied. Not in a paranormal way. In the way you can feel a person behind you in a checkout line without turning. A pressure in the air that made my skin pay attention. "Nina." The voice cut through my spiral like a hand on my shoulder. I jumped, and the bat tapped the wall with a dumb, hollow sound. Across the street, under the yellow glow of a street lamp, a woman stood halfway down her walkway with a recycling bin in one hand. She raised the other hand in a small wave, eyebrows lifted in concern. This is Maya Herschel, 38, female, my across-the-street neighbor, who has the calm competence of someone who has kept a household running through minor disasters. She has a partner, 2 kids I see in the mornings with backpacks and sleepy faces, and a habit of calling out hello like she's checking that the neighborhood is still a neighborhood. "I saw your light," she called. "Everything okay?" Buddy barked at her, which was rude and also a relief because it meant his attention had a target. "I'm fine," I said too fast. "Sorry, just my doorbell's acting weird." Maya stepped a little closer, not onto the street, but to the edge of her driveway. Weird how? I hesitated. Saying it out loud made it feel either dramatic or stupid, and I didn't want to be either in front of the person who could later be a witness to my embarrassment. "It keeps saying there's someone at my door," I admitted. "But it's not showing anyone." Maya's expression shifted, subtle. A quick mental inventory, the kind adults do automatically. "You want me to come over?" "I don't know," I said. The cold air sharpened the words. "Maybe it's just a bug, or a cat." Maya glanced at my porch, then at my front window, then back at me. "My brother installed ours," she said. "Those things can be finicky. The sensitivity gets weird when the weather changes." "Yeah," I said, clinging to that explanation like it was a railing. She smiled a little, the kind that tries to make normalcy contagious. "Do you want me to text him? He lives 10 minutes away. He's a cop, but like off-duty. He also likes gadgets." That made my throat tighten in a different way. Not fear, exactly. Something like resistance. I didn't want a cop at my house because my doorbell got confused. I didn't want to be on anyone's radar as the anxious woman who called the police because her app sent a notification. But I also didn't like the way the doorframe hid that strip of porch. And I didn't like that Buddy still wasn't wagging. I can just reset it, I said, because that was the version of me I wanted to be. Practical, unbothered, someone who handled her own problems. Maya's gaze dropped, just briefly, to the bat in my hand. It wasn't judgmental. It was understanding. That somehow made my face feel hot. "Okay," she said gently. "But Nina, if you see something, or if you feel weird, you call. I'm serious." "I will," I lied because I didn't call. That's one of my flaws. I wait too long because I don't want to be a burden, and then I'm shocked when waiting makes things worse. Maya rolled her recycling bin back up her driveway. "I'm going to be inside," she called, as if giving me a safety net. "Text me if anything." "I will," I said again, this time meaning it more. I closed my door, locked it, and stood in the entryway for a moment with my ear angled toward the porch. Nothing. No footsteps. No cough. Just the distant hush of a car, Buddy's collar tag clinking once when he shifted. My phone buzzed in my pocket like it was impatient. Person detected front door. I walked back to the kitchen and set the bat down with the careful gentleness of someone placing a bad idea on a counter. I tapped into the doorbell settings, thumb moving with muscle memory. Sensitivity, motion zones, package detection, person detection, all those toggles that promised control. The motion zone was a blue shape drawn over the porch. It ended at the very edge of that blind spot. I could extend it, technically. The app would let me draw it wider, right into the slice of space where the door frame blocked my view. But that would also include the street, and it would trigger every time a car passed, every time Maya's kids ran out to the bus, every time a leaf moved. There was another option too, the privacy setting, the one that blacked out parts of the image so you didn't record your neighbor's yard. I'd set it when I moved in because it felt like the decent thing. Maybe that had created the blind spot. Maybe it was my own attempt at being considerate that had cut a hole in my awareness. I zoomed in on the last clip again. I turned the brightness up until the porch looked like a cheap security feed from a gas station. The corner shape was still there, a little larger now than it had been in the first clip. Too consistent for a moth, too solid for a leaf. I scrubbed back and paused it at the moment the notification fired. The algorithm had decided there was a person, but the camera hadn't given me one. I glanced toward the front window. The curtains hung still. The glass reflected my kitchen, my sink full of dishes, the yellow overhead light, my own face drawn tight. Buddy paced a small loop between the kitchen and the living room, stopping each time to look at the front door. He wasn't barking now. He was listening. I thought about Maya's offer, her brother. The idea of someone who knew what to do showing up and telling me it was nothing. The relief of being able to hand the fear to someone else. I also thought about the last time I involved someone official in something I couldn't explain, and how small I'd felt afterward. Quickly concerned turned into overreacting, and how that stuck to me like a label. My phone buzzed again and again. 3 notifications in 2 minutes, like the doorbell was stuck on a loop. I opened the live view. The porch was empty. The blind spot waited at the edge of the frame like a missing tooth. I set my phone down and stared at it for a long time. Like if I stared hard enough, I could intimidate reality back into behaving. Then, I did the one thing that felt both safe and dangerous. I hit save video on the last 3 clips. Not because I was sure I'd need them. Not because I was sure anything was happening. Because if something did happen later, I couldn't stand the thought of having nothing, no record, no proof, no breadcrumb trail for my own sanity. Behind me, Buddy let out a soft, low sound. Not a growl. A warning that hadn't picked a shape yet. I looked at the front door. I looked at the bat on the counter. I looked at Maya's number in my recent texts. And I realized I had a choice to make that was going to decide what kind of story this was, long before I understood what I was up against. I could widen the motion zone and let the doorbell see more, even if it meant my phone would light up all night with useless alerts. Or I could keep it as it was, my polite blind spot intact, and go to bed telling myself that person detected didn't mean anything if I couldn't see a person. My thumb hovered over the little blue shape on the screen. Buddy sat down at my feet, braced like he was ready to be told what we were doing. Outside, on the porch, the wind moved the welcome mat just enough to lift one corner and let it slap back down. I didn't touch the screen yet. I just listened to the house settling around me and tried to decide whether I wanted more information or more peace. I widened the motion zone, not all the way, just enough to swallow the blind spot. The blue shape on the app stretched toward the hinge side of the door, a little jagged where my finger wobbled. The app flashed a warning. Increased activity may cause frequent notifications. Fine, I muttered. Let it. I hit save. For a moment, nothing happened. The porch on live view looked the same wet concrete wobble bench, the thin metal railing catching the light. Buddy stayed seated at my feet, chest tight, like he was waiting for a cue. Then my phone buzzed. Person detected, front door. So fast it felt like the app had been holding its breath. I opened the clip. This time, the upper right corner wasn't ambiguous. It wasn't a curved suggestion or a shadow. It was fabric, dark, textured. The edge of a sleeve, maybe, and a slice of torso that stopped exactly where the camera's distortion began to stretch. Whoever it was stood so close to my door that the lens couldn't capture them fully. Just a sliver, just enough to confirm shape. They weren't moving. The timestamp read 8:31 p.m. I scrubbed forward. The person didn't knock, didn't shift. The clip ended at 10 seconds. I opened live view, empty. My breath had gone shallow without me noticing. I let it out slowly and checked the previous 3 saved clips. The shape had been there too, just less obvious, closer to the edge of detection. So someone had been standing there for at least a few minutes, not ringing the bell, not knocking, just there. Buddy stood up abruptly and padded to the door, nose low, tail stiff. He sniffed at the bottom seam and made a soft, frustrated sound. "Hey," I whispered, as if volume mattered. I walked to the window again and peeled the curtain back the smallest possible amount. The porch looked empty, but I could see now how someone could stand flush against the hinge side of the door, pressed to the siding, and be invisible from my angle unless I leaned dangerously far. I didn't lean. My phone buzzed again. Person detected, front door. I opened the clip immediately. The sleeve was closer now, more of it visible, a wrinkle in the fabric where an elbow bent slightly. They had moved, not away, closer. A pulse of anger surprised me, cutting through the fear. If someone wanted something, they could knock. If they were lost, they could step back into frame. Standing there deliberately out of sight felt intentional. Testing. My private fear, men who decide you're convenient, stirred like something being poked with a stick. I grabbed the bat without thinking. "Okay," I said out loud, because silence felt like surrender. "Okay, we're not doing this." I opened the door hard. The cold air hit my face first. Then the porch light caught on fabric. He was right there. A man stood flat against the siding, shoulders turned so his body fit into the narrow wedge between the hinge side of the door and the railing. He'd been positioned exactly where the camera could only see a slice. He jerked back when the door swung open, as startled as I was. He was taller than me, maybe mid-30s, dark hoodie zipped halfway, jeans damp at the hem. His face was pale in the porch light, eyes wide, not feral, not cartoonish, just human and caught. "What the hell?" I said, the bat already raised before I could think about how that looked. Hey, okay," he said quickly, palms up. Sorry. I didn't mean to freak you out." Buddy exploded into barking, lunging forward, until the leash snapped taut in my hand. "Why are you standing there?" My voice sounded thin and sharp. He glanced past me into the house like he was checking something. "I think someone stole my phone. I tracked it to this address." The sentence landed in pieces. "What?" "My phone," he said, speaking faster now, like speed could make it credible. "It pinged here." I didn't want to knock because I wasn't sure if whoever had it would answer. I just wanted to see if I could hear it. He had been listening. "To what?" I asked. "To my ringtone. It's on loud." My brain tried to assemble this into something reasonable. Phones get stolen. They get tracked. People do weird, socially awkward things when they're anxious. But he hadn't knocked. He hadn't stepped back into view. He'd chosen the one place on my porch where he couldn't be seen directly. "Why didn't you just ring the bell?" I demanded. "I didn't want to tip someone off," he said. "Look, I know how this looks. It looks bad." "I'm not," he exhaled, visibly trying to steady himself. "I'm not here to hurt anyone. I just want my phone." "Your phone," I repeated. He nodded. "It was in my car. I was at the gas station on River Road. I came back and it was gone. I tracked it on my friend's phone. It says it's here." River Road was real. The gas station was real. It was about 8 minutes from my house. "That's not possible," I said. "I've been home all night." "I'm not saying you took it," he snapped, then immediately softened his tone. "I'm just saying the map shows this location." "Show me," he hesitated, just a fraction too long. "It's dead now," he said. "Battery ran out. That's why I was trying to hear it before." Buddy's barking shifted into a lower growl, a vibration I felt through the leash. I realized my heart was pounding so hard it was making my fingers tingle. "What's your name?" I asked. "Eric," he said. "Eric Nolan." "ID," he blinked. "What? Show me your ID." He looked annoyed, but he reached into his back pocket slowly and pulled out a wallet. He held up a driver's license. I stepped forward just enough to read it without lowering the bat. Eric Nolan, 34. Address in a neighboring town, about 20 minutes south. It could be real. "Why were you pressed against my door?" I asked again. "Why not stand where the camera could see you?" He glanced at the small doorbell camera, then back at me. I didn't want whoever had it to see me on the app. My skin prickled, so he knew I had the app. "You think someone inside my house stole your phone?" I said. "No," he said quickly. "No, look, I didn't think this through." I panicked. "I saw the pin drop here and I drove." "Did you call the police?" He let out a short laugh. "For a phone, they won't do anything." That part was probably true. Behind him, across the street, Maya's front door opened. Light spilled onto her porch. "Nina," she called. Eric's head snapped toward the sound. I stepped fully onto the porch now, putting my body between him and the doorway. "Stay there," I said to him, then raised my voice. "Maya, I'm okay." Maya walked halfway down her steps, phone in hand. "Everything good?" "This guy says his phone pinged here," I said, keeping my eyes on Eric. Maya's gaze sharpened immediately. She took in the hoodie, the damp jeans, the way he stood too close to my threshold. "Did you call the police?" she asked him. He shifted his weight. "No, it's just a misunderstanding." Maya lifted her phone slightly. "I can." The air felt tight. "I don't want cops involved," Eric said quickly. "It's probably a glitch. The map's not exact." "It brought you to my house," I said. "Yeah, but those GPS pins can be off by a house or two." "Then why are you standing on my porch?" Maya asked. He opened his mouth, then closed it. I realized something then, a small procedural detail that slid into place like a key. "If your phone was on loud," I said slowly, "and you were trying to hear it, why didn't I hear it too?" He stared at me. "It's quiet out here," I went on. "I would have heard it. Maybe it died before you said it just died." Silence stretched. Not dramatic, just thick with the kind of pause where someone decides what lie to tell next. But he lunged again, barking hard enough that spittle hit my wrist. Eric took a step back off the porch. "Look," he said, "I don't want trouble. I'll check the next house." He turned quick and walked down my steps. "Wait," Maya called. "What gas station did you say?" But he was already moving toward the sidewalk. I watched him cross the street, not toward the next house, but toward the corner. He didn't knock on anyone else's door. He didn't check another porch. He just kept walking until the darkness swallowed him past the lamppost. Maya crossed the street without asking and came up my steps. "You okay?" she asked quietly. "I think so." "You don't look okay." "I'm fine." That automatic answer again. The flaw that keeps me isolated. Maya glanced at the camera. He knew about the app. "Yeah," and he knew where to stand. I nodded. Buddy finally stopped barking, but he stayed pressed against my leg, vibrating with leftover adrenaline. "You should call someone," Maya said. "At least make a report." "For what?" I asked. "A guy standing on my porch. For that," she said firmly. "For him lying." I looked down at my phone. Another notification sat there, unopened. Person detected front door. 8:42 p.m., but we were standing on the porch. The motion zone now covered the entire area. "Did you get that just now?" Maya asked, seeing my expression. I nodded. We both turned slowly toward the camera. There was no one else here. I opened the clip. The timestamp was 8:42. The frame showed the porch empty except for a second, barely a second, where a shadow slid across the very bottom edge of the frame. Low, fast, too low for a standing person. "Could be a car," Maya said. There wasn't one. We both listened. No engine, no footsteps. "Maybe he doubled back," she whispered. My throat went dry. We stepped off the porch together and walked to the edge of the lawn. The street looked normal. A sedan drove by at a steady, unhurried pace. The houses across the way glowed with TV light and dinner dishes. "He left," Maya said. "I saw him." "So did I." My phone buzzed again in my hand. Person detected front door. 8:44 p.m. This time, the thumbnail showed something unmistakable. The porch empty, and my front door handle turning. The clip ended before it finished its rotation. Maya inhaled sharply beside me. "You locked it," she said. "Yes." We both looked at the door. It was closed, still, the porch light steady. My hand shook as I tapped live view. The camera loaded slowly, like it was considering whether to cooperate. The image came up. The door handle was still. But the door was open, not wide, just a thin black line where the frame met the jamb. I felt it then, not a cinematic jolt, but a sinking recognition. I had stepped fully outside. I had been talking. And at some point, in that small gap of distraction, I hadn't heard the click. Behind us, the house sat quiet. Buddy's leash went slack in my hand, and the entryway light inside flickered once, like something had brushed past it. Maya grabbed my wrist before I could move. "Don't just go in," she said. Her voice was low, steady in that way people get when they're actively choosing not to panic. The front door sat 10 feet away from us, slightly ajar. The porch light washed over it, making the gap look darker than it probably was. From the lawn, I could see the narrow slice of my entryway, the small runner rug, the closet door with the dent near the knob, the edge of the radiator. "Buddy," I whispered. He wasn't barking. He wasn't moving at all, just staring at that gap. Maya took her phone out. "I'm calling my brother." I almost told her not to. Reflex. Pride. The old instinct to handle it myself. But then I pictured Eric's shoulder pressed against my siding, the way he'd known exactly where to stand. "Call him," I said. She stepped a few feet away, voice dropping as she explained quickly. "Possible break-in, man lingering, door opened while we were outside." I caught the words "right now" and 2 houses down. My own phone felt heavy in my hand. I opened the last clip again. The handle turned, not violently, not forced. It looked like someone testing it. "Did you lock it?" Maya asked when she hung up. "Yes." "Deadbolt too?" "Yes." We both stared at the door. "If the deadbolt was locked," she said slowly, "the handle shouldn't open it." "It didn't swing wide," I said, "just that much. Maybe you didn't pull it all the way closed earlier." I did, but doubt crept in anyway. Had I? I'd stepped out fast. I'd been holding a bat. Maybe I hadn't felt the latch catch. "Okay," Maya said. "We're not going in blind." Her brother's headlights turned the corner 2 minutes later, bright and white, and too loud in the quiet street. Parked crooked in front of her house, and got out fast, not in uniform, jeans, boots, jacket zipped halfway. He moved with the loose confidence of someone used to stepping into other people's problems. "This is Daniel Herschel, 42, male, Maya's older brother, patrol officer in a neighboring county. The kind of guy who fills a doorway even when he's relaxed." "What have we got?" he asked, eyes already scanning my porch. "Door opened while we were out here," Maya said. "Guy was lurking before that." Daniel looked at me. "You see him leave?" "Yes." "Did he threaten you?" "No." "Did he try to force entry?" "I don't know." He nodded once, processing. "Okay, I'm going to check inside. You stay behind me." He didn't draw his weapon. He didn't act dramatic. He just walked up the steps and pushed the door open fully with his knuckles. The entryway light flickered again when the door moved. We followed, a few steps behind. My house isn't big. You can see most of it from the front door. Straight ahead is the narrow hallway that leads to the bathroom and bedroom. To the left, the living room opens up, couch against the far wall, TV stand beneath the window. To the right, the kitchen where the sink still held dishes and the bat lay on the counter. Daniel moved methodically. He cleared the living room first, stepping in and sweeping his gaze low to high. He checked behind the couch, opened the coat closet, even crouched to glance under the small table by the window. Nothing. He moved down the hallway. The bathroom door was open. He pushed it wider with 2 fingers, peered inside. Shower curtain still, mirror reflecting his own tense face back at him. Bedroom next. He stepped in, then paused. "What?" I whispered from the hallway. "Windows open," he said. My stomach dropped into my shoes. I hadn't opened the bedroom window. It was February. The air outside was damp and sharp. He walked to it carefully. The window faced the side yard, a narrow strip between my house and the neighbor's fence, maybe 3 feet wide. Not a place anyone would casually pass through. The lower sash was lifted about 4 inches. "Did you open this?" he asked. "No." He touched the frame, then the latch. "There's no sign of forced entry." Maya stepped up behind me. "Could he have come in through here?" Daniel shook his head. 4 inches. Not unless he's a cat. We all exhaled, just a little. I stepped into the bedroom and felt it then, the cold air drifting in, thin but steady. The curtain lifted slightly with each faint gust. I walked to the nightstand. My phone charger was unplugged. I stared at it. "I had this plugged in," I said. Daniel glanced over. "You sure?" "Yes, could have fallen out." It was tight. He bent down and examined the outlet. Nothing looked damaged. The cord lay coiled loosely on the floor. "Anything missing?" he asked. I scanned the room. Jewelry dish. Laptop on the desk. Closet door closed. Bed unmade the way I'd left it. "No," I said slowly. "I don't think so." Daniel nodded. "Okay, let's check the rest." We moved back through the house. Kitchen unchanged. Back door still locked. He opened it anyway, scanning the small fenced yard. The gate at the back corner was closed, padlock hanging loose but intact. He came back inside and shut the door. "Nothing obvious," he said, "which is good." But the door opened, Maya insisted. Daniel looked at the front door. He tested the handle. It turned, but the latch caught. He twisted the deadbolt. It clicked smoothly. "You might not have pulled it fully closed," he said gently. I did. He didn't argue. We can dust for prints, but realistically, if he just touched the handle, that's not going to give us much. And if he didn't enter, there's no burglary. "So what do?" I asked. "Lock everything. Maybe stay with Maya tonight." The suggestion hit harder than I expected. Leave my house. Let someone else win the psychological battle. "I don't want to," I said. Daniel shrugged. "Up to you. I can drive around the block for a bit, see if I spot him." "Please," Maya said. He nodded and headed out. The house felt smaller once he left. Not because it was unsafe, exactly, but because it had been inspected and still held uncertainty. Maya stayed with me in the kitchen. She leaned against the counter, arms folded. "Okay," she said. "Let's assume he didn't get in." "Okay, but he was definitely here." "Yes, and he knew about your camera." "Yes." "Did he look like he'd been in your yard before?" The question made me pause. I thought about the way he'd positioned himself, the confidence in that narrow wedge. He hadn't been guessing. "He looked comfortable," I admitted. Maya nodded grimly. "That bothers me." My phone buzzed again. We both flinched. Person detected, front door. 9:07 p.m. we were inside. Daniel was driving around the block. I opened the clip. The porch was empty. Then, at the very bottom of the frame near the step, something moved. Long, thin, quick. My brain supplied the worst possible image immediately. "Snake," I whispered. Maya leaned closer. In February, the shape darted across the bottom edge again, then disappeared. We watched it 3 more times before the obvious explanation settled in. The welcome mat. The wind had lifted it enough that the corner dragged across the concrete, creating a shadow the algorithm interpreted as movement. Maya let out a breath that turned into a short, shaky laugh. "Okay, that one's not a person." I nodded, embarrassed at how fast my imagination had sprinted. But the relief didn't last, because the next notification came less than a minute later. Person detected front door. 9:08 p.m. this time, the clip showed something new. The porch, empty. Then, just for a second, the faintest reflection in the glass of the storm door. A shape behind the camera. Not on the porch, behind it. Inside the narrow space between the main door and the outer storm door. My skin went cold in a practical, physical way. Is that? Maya began. I zoomed in. The resolution degraded, pixels stretching, but the outline remained. Someone had wedged themselves between the storm door and the main door. There's barely 8 inches of space there. Enough for a package. Not enough for a person. Except the storm door wasn't flush. It bowed outward slightly. If someone pressed into that space and pulled the storm door gently closed, they could hide in that sliver and be invisible from the porch. Daniel said he closed the door fully, Maya whispered. He did. My mind ran backward. When Daniel opened the front door, he'd pushed it wide. The storm door had swung out and then back in. We'd been focused on the interior, on the bedroom window. If someone had been standing flat against the outside wall while Daniel entered, they could have slipped into that narrow pocket as he moved inside. We never looked at the space between the doors. Call him, I said. Maya was already dialing. But before she could speak, there was a soft, deliberate sound from the front of the house. Not the wind, not the mat. A slow, careful push. The storm door handle rattled once, twice, testing. We both froze. The sound came again, louder now, the metal scraping lightly against the frame. He's still here, Maya breathed into the phone. I grabbed the bat. My hands were slick. My arms felt heavy, like I'd been lifting weights for hours. The handle rattled harder, then stopped. Silence stretched, thick and suffocating. Daniel's voice crackled faintly from Maya's phone. I'm pulling up. Headlights washed across the living room window. The rattling stopped immediately. We ran to the front door together. Daniel sprinted up the steps, boots heavy on wood. He yanked the storm door open, empty. The porch stood bare under the light. Daniel stepped out and swung around the side of the house, boots crunching on gravel. He disappeared into the narrow side yard where the bedroom window faced. Maya and I stood in the entryway, breathing too fast. Seconds ticked. Then Daniel's voice came from the side of the house. He's back here. The word hit like a physical shove. I moved without thinking, stepping out onto the porch again. Stay inside, Daniel shouted. But I was already at the top of the steps. I saw it then, a shadow moving fast along the fence line, heading toward the back gate. Daniel gave chase. The gate clanged as it swung open. I ran down the steps, ignoring Maya calling my name. The backyard isn't large, maybe 20 feet deep, enclosed by a 6-foot wooden fence. Gate at the far corner opens into a narrow alley that runs behind 3 houses before emptying onto the next street. By the time I reached the back door, Daniel was halfway through the alley. I could hear footsteps pounding on wet pavement, and then a sharp crack. Daniel stumbled. I didn't think, I just ran. I hit the gate hard, shoulder slamming into wood. Pain shot down my arm, but I forced it open. Daniel was on one knee in the alley, cursing under his breath. A brick lay near his foot. He threw it, Daniel said, jaw tight. Hit the wall, shards. Blood seeped through his jeans just below the knee. The alley stretched left and right, dimly lit by one flickering security light mounted above a garage. No sign of the man. He was gone. But the alley didn't feel empty. It felt watched. And for the first time since the notifications started, I understood something clearly. This wasn't about a phone. This wasn't random. He had stayed. He had adapted. He had hidden inches from my door while we searched my house. And now Daniel was bleeding. Sirens wailed faintly in the distance. Daniel must have radioed for backup. I looked back at my house from the alley. The back door stood open. The gate swung wide. The front porch light glowed steady. And in the living room window, I saw movement. Not outside, inside. The movement in the living room window was small. A shift of shadow behind the curtain. A shape passing through the slice of light from the hallway. It could have been Maya. It could have been Buddy. But Maya was behind me in the alley now, breathless, her phone pressed to her ear. And Buddy was inside the house, yes, but Buddy didn't move like that. Buddy didn't make the curtains pulse outward for half a second, as if someone had brushed past them. Daniel swore, low and tight. He pressed his palm to the cut below his knee. The blood was dark in the alley light, soaking into denim. "Nina," he said, "back. Now." My legs didn't want to. They felt disconnected, as if my brain had to shout down a hallway to move them. I looked at the gate, still swinging slightly on its hinges. I looked at the back door, standing open to the kitchen. I could smell my own house from here, dish soap, the faint metallic scent of the radiator, Buddy's dog smell. The sirens were closer now, a wavering sound that rose and fell with turns. Maya's voice came sharp through the phone. "He's inside. I saw movement. Daniel's hurt. We need someone now." Daniel grabbed my forearm with a bloody hand. His grip was firm, grounding. "Do not go back in ahead of me." I started. "I know what you saw," he said. "Listen, you stay with Maya. I'm going to secure the back door and hold. Backup's coming." He took one step and hissed, the injury pulling. It wasn't dramatic. It was the plain, sickening reality that he couldn't sprint now. He couldn't charge through rooms. If there was someone inside my house, he was moving with a limp cop and 2 women in the alley and sirens approaching. He had options. Hide, run out the front, take something, take someone. And my front door, I suddenly realized, would still be visible from the street. If he slipped out there, he'd be in a pool of porch light and then just gone. "Buddy," I said, like my dog was a plan. Maya grabbed my sleeve. "Nina, don't." Buddy barked inside the house, then hard, frantic, a sound that wasn't warning anymore, but demand. Daniel's eyes went up, wide now. "That dog is engaging." He shifted toward the back door, jaw set. Okay. We might not have the luxury to wait." The alley light flickered. The sirens grew louder. Something thumped inside my kitchen. A single, heavy sound, like a cabinet door being closed with too much force. My body moved before my pride could. I ran through the gate and across the small yard, gravel biting through my shoe soles. The back door yawed open. The kitchen light was on, warm, ordinary. The contrast made everything worse. I stopped at the threshold. Daniel came up behind me, slower, bracing a hand on the frame. "Stay behind me," he repeated, voice clipped with strain. Maya hovered in the yard, phone in hand, torn between helping and listening to dispatch. Buddy's barking was coming from the front of the house now, not the kitchen. Living room area. "Buddy," I called, and my voice sounded too high, too thin in my own ears. No response, obviously, but the barking changed pitch, as if he'd heard me and got angrier. Daniel drew his weapon then, not smoothly. It came out with the slightly awkward motion of someone doing it while injured. The sight of it made my stomach twist. It also made the situation feel suddenly irreversible. We were past, maybe, past glitch, past misunderstanding. Daniel stepped inside. I stayed one step behind him anyway. The kitchen was untouched at first glance. Sink full, bat missing from the counter. My phone was still there, face down. The back door chain lock was broken. I'd never fixed it after the last tenant. I saw it now, dangling uselessly from the door jamb like a loose tooth. Daniel moved toward the hallway, gun up, light from the kitchen falling across the floor runner. A soft sound came from the living room. Not a step, not a breath. A click, my front doorbell. Somebody pressed it. The chime echoed through the house, cheerful, absurd. Maya gasped from the backyard. He's at the front. Daniel froze. His head snapped toward the sound. Buddy's barking surged like a wave. I felt my brain split into two tracks. One, pure panic. Two, cold observation. If he rang the bell, he wanted us to move. He wanted Daniel's attention pulled away from wherever he really was. "Don't go," I whispered. Daniel didn't answer. His eyes flicked to me, then to the hallway. He was making a decision with incomplete information, and I could see the anger in it, at himself, at the situation, at whoever had orchestrated this. The doorbell notification buzzed on my phone on the counter. Person detected, front door. Even as we stood in the kitchen, Daniel's gaze snapped to it. "Show me." I grabbed the phone with shaky fingers and opened the clip. For a second, the porch was empty. Then a shoulder slid into frame, dark hoodie, close enough to blur. The lens caught the edge of his jaw. And behind him, at the hinge side of the door, a sliver of something pale, a hand, not at the doorbell, at the doorframe, holding the storm door slightly open, like he was trying to keep a pocket of space to slip into again. Daniel swore. "He's trying to wedge himself." He started forward. "No," I blurted, louder now. "He wants you up there." Maya's voice came from outside, strained. "Daniel, he's at the front. I can see his shadow through the glass." Daniel paused at the hallway entrance, caught between. "Nina, get out, now. I'm not leaving Buddy." Buddy barked again, then yelped short, sharp, the sound of a dog being startled or grabbed. My blood turned to ice in the most literal way I've ever felt. Not dramatic, just instant cold flooding my arms and face. "Buddy," I ran. Daniel grabbed for me and missed. His injured leg buckled a fraction. That half second was all it took. I tore down the hallway toward the living room, feet slipping on the runner rug. My mind was screaming at me about knives, guns, blunt objects, about being stupid. I didn't care. The living room was half lit by the porch light spilling through the front window. The curtains moved slightly, as if someone had just brushed past them. The air smelled different here, dust from the baseboard heater, the faint sweet of the candle I'd burned earlier and forgotten to blow out. Buddy was in the middle of the room, hackles up, barking at the front door. And the front door, my front door, was open now. Not wide, just enough for a body to fit through sideways. A man stood in the gap, 1 foot inside the house. He was Eric now, or maybe he was, but the performance was gone. His hood was up. His face was half hidden, but I saw eyes. Focused, flat. He held Buddy's leash in one hand. My leash. The one I'd dropped somewhere between panic and instinct. Buddy lunged, trying to reach him, and the man jerked the leash hard, pulling Buddy's collar tight. Buddy's bark choked into a gagging sound. "Don't," I said, voice cracking. "Don't hurt him." The man's gaze flicked to me. He didn't speak. He stepped backward, pulling Buddy toward the open doorway. It hit me then. This wasn't about stealing my TV. This wasn't about a phone. This was about leverage, about forcing me to come close. My private fear, the one I carried like a stone in my pocket, was suddenly not private at all. It was standing in my doorway with my dog's life in his hand. Daniel's voice boomed from the hallway. "Police, let the dog go." The man's head turned slightly, calculating. His grip tightened on the leash. Buddy wheezed. I moved without planning. A desperate, stupid idea that arrived full-formed because my brain had nothing else to offer. I grabbed the end table by the couch and shoved it hard. It scraped across the hardwood with a loud, ugly screech. It wasn't aimed at him. It was aimed at the space between us: noise, disruption, something unpredictable. The man flinched. Not much, but enough. Buddy surged forward in that moment, twisting his body, gaining an inch of slack. His teeth snapped and caught fabric, hoodie sleeve. He didn't get skin, but he got purchase. The man cursed. The first word I'd heard from him. Human, ugly. He yanked the leash again. Buddy yelped and stumbled, claws scrabbling. I lunged too, grabbing for the leash near Buddy's collar. My fingers closed around nylon. Rough, familiar. For half a second, we were all connected, me, Buddy, the man. Then Daniel fired, not at the man, into the ceiling. The sound was deafening. Plaster dust rained down in a soft white sprinkle. The candle on the shelf flickered violently and went out. The man jerked back, startled for real now. Buddy took advantage, twisting again. His collar slipped halfway off his neck because it was too loose, because I'd always left it loose so he'd be comfortable. A tiny detail, paid for now with panic. Buddy slipped free. He bolted toward me. The man's hand shot out, grabbing for Buddy's scruff and missing. His fingers caught my sleeve instead, yanking me toward the doorway. Pain flared in my shoulder. I stumbled, caught myself, and in that stumble, my hand brushed something on the floor near the entry rug. A phone, not mine. Black screen, cracked corner, Eric's phone. It was real. It had been here. I saw the intruder's eyes drop to it too, for the briefest instant. Possession, panic, calculation. Daniel advanced, gun steady now despite his limp, jaw clenched so tight it made his cheek muscles jump. "Let her go," he said, calm voice, deadly serious. The man released my sleeve immediately and stepped backward out the door. But he didn't run. He lifted something from his pocket, small, metallic. A box cutter. He flicked it open with one thumb, blade catching porch light. Maya screamed from somewhere outside. "Daniel," I froze. My body forgot how to move. Daniel didn't. He angled himself between the man and me. "Drop it," Daniel said. "Now." The man's eyes flicked over Daniel's stance, over the gun, over the injured leg. He made a choice. He slashed, not at Daniel's throat, not at a movie target. At Daniel's forearm as Daniel reached forward instinctively. It was fast. A shallow cut, but it opened immediately, bright red against skin. Daniel swore and recoiled, just a fraction. That fraction was enough. The man turned and ran down the porch steps. Daniel tried to follow, took 2 limping steps, then stopped, breathing hard. Blood ran down his arm. He lowered the gun, grimacing not from pain, but from the knowledge that he couldn't chase. "Stay," he snapped at me, like a command he'd used 100 times. I didn't. I ran to the doorway anyway, heart hammering, Buddy pressed against my leg, as if he could anchor me. The man sprinted across the front yard, not toward the street lamp this time, but toward the side yard, the narrow strip by the bedroom window. He moved like someone who knew the route. He vaulted the fence at the back corner with practiced ease, disappearing into the alley again. Sirens roared now, right at the end of the block. Blue and red lights flashed across the living room walls like broken TV. 2 patrol cars skidded into view, tires spraying water. Doors opened. Shouts. Daniel stepped onto the porch, arm bleeding, and raised his voice. Suspect fleeing through the rear alley. Hooded male. Maya appeared at the edge of my lawn, face pale, hair messy, phone still in hand. She ran to Daniel, grabbing his injured arm carefully. "I'm fine," he grunted, though he clearly was. One officer sprinted toward the side yard. Another ducked into the alley. Flashlights stabbed through darkness. Commands echoed, overlapping and harsh. I stood in my doorway, shaking so hard my teeth clicked. Buddy pressed his body against my shin, trembling too. My gaze dropped to the floor near the entry rug. The phone lay there, screen still black, cracked corner. Mud smeared along its edge. He dropped it when he grabbed for Buddy, or when I stumbled, or when Daniel fired. It was evidence. It was also proof that the entire "my phone pinged here" story had been a hook with a barb. Inside the house, the ceiling had a fresh hole the size of a fist. Dust coated my coffee table. The end table sat crooked where I'd shoved it. The air smelled like gunpowder and burnt wick, and cold outside air streaming through my open door. Daniel looked back at me, eyes sharp, and for a second, the professional mask slipped enough for me to see the human cost behind it. He was trying to keep it together on adrenaline and stubbornness. He was bleeding from 2 places. "You okay?" he asked, voice suddenly softer. I tried to answer. My throat wouldn't cooperate. A 3rd patrol car pulled up, and an officer approached me slowly, palms visible. "Ma'am," he said, "are you injured?" I stared at him, at the badge, at the radio mic, at the calm tone that arrived too late to keep things from happening. "No," I said finally, and the word came out like air escaping a puncture. The officer nodded. "We're going to clear the house again. You stay with your neighbor." Maya wrapped an arm around my shoulders, guiding me down the porch steps, as if I might float away. As we moved toward her house across the street, I looked back once. The porch light still burned. The doorbell camera sat solid and indifferent, its small lens facing outward. My phone buzzed in my hand, as if it had waited politely for the violence to pass. Person detected, front door. 9:23 p.m. I opened the clip without thinking. The porch was full of officers now. Flashlights, uniforms, movement. But the detection box, the little green outline that signaled person, wasn't around any of them. It was drawn, instead, at the hinge side of my door, around empty space. As if the camera still insisted someone stood there, pressed flat against my house, just out of view. The sirens stopped feeling urgent once they were parked. Blue and red lights washed across my house in slow, lazy pulses, while officers moved through it with deliberate steps. Flashlights swept corners that had already been checked. Radios crackled. Names and descriptions were repeated in flat, professional voices. I stood on Maya's porch, wrapped in one of her kids' fleece blankets, even though I wasn't cold anymore. Adrenaline drains quietly. It doesn't announce when it's leaving. It just takes your steadiness with it. Buddy lay pressed against my leg, chin on my foot. Every time a car door slammed or a radio squawked, he flinched. His collar hung crooked around his neck where it had slipped. I reached down and tightened it one notch with hands that still wouldn't quite behave. Across the street, Daniel sat on the bumper of a patrol car while an EMT cleaned the cut on his forearm. "Hold still," the EMT said. "I am," Daniel muttered, though he was. His jaw was tight, eyes flicking toward my house every few seconds like he expected it to sprout legs and run. The brick had torn through his jeans just below the knee. It wasn't deep enough for stitches, but it would bruise hard. The cut on his arm was longer, shallow, but messy. The EMT irrigated it while Daniel stared straight ahead. "You're lucky," the EMT said casually. "Another inch and that'd be muscle." Daniel didn't respond. Maya squeezed my shoulder. "You should get checked too." "I'm fine." I wasn't bleeding. My shoulder ached where the intruder had grabbed me, but it felt like a distant thing happening to someone else. An officer approached us. Younger. "Rias." "Ma'am, we need a statement." "Okay." He led me back across the street. The porch light was still on. The front door stood open, held that way by a uniformed officer with a clipboard. The ceiling in my living room had a jagged hole the size of a grapefruit. White plaster dust coated the TV stand. My end table was tipped over. The candle had burned down into a shallow puddle of wax. It looked like a house that had survived something clumsy. I stepped inside and felt the shift immediately. My house no longer felt like mine. It felt like a scene, something cataloged. The officer asked me to sit on the couch while he took notes. "Start from when you first noticed anything unusual," he said. I told him about the notifications, the blind spot, the man claiming his phone had pinged here, the door opening while we were outside, the storm door reflection, the brick, the box cutter. When I got to Buddy's leash, my voice faltered. The officer's pen paused. He grabbed the dog. "Yes." "Did he say anything threatening?" "No." "Did he attempt to enter further than the doorway?" "He had one foot inside." The officer nodded, writing. "Do you recognize him from anywhere?" he asked. "No." "You mentioned a name, Eric Nolan. He showed me an ID. We'll check that." He glanced toward the cracked phone now sitting in an evidence bag on my coffee table. "Forensics will process that. If it's his, that helps." "If it's not?" I asked. He gave a small shrug. "Then we're looking at someone who planned to drop it." The idea settled into my stomach like a stone. Outside, a K9 unit arrived. The dog barked once and then went quiet as it was led into the alley. I sat through the rest of the statement with the strange detachment of someone listening to their own story from across the room. Eventually, the officers finished clearing the house again. No one inside. No one in the crawl space. No one on the roof. They left 2 patrol cars idling at the end of the block for a while longer. Daniel refused transport to the hospital. "I'll go to urgent care in the morning," he said. "It's superficial." The EMT didn't argue. He wrapped the forearm cut tightly and gave Daniel instructions about infection. When the last cruiser pulled away, the street returned to its usual quiet. Porch lights clicked off one by one. Maya stood in my living room, arms folded, looking at the ceiling. "You're not staying here tonight." It wasn't a question. "I am," I said automatically. "Nina." I looked at the hole in my ceiling, at the scuff marks on the hardwood where the end table had scraped, at the faint smear of blood near the entry rug that didn't belong to me. "I need to," I said. "If I leave, it feels like I don't know." "Like he wins," she supplied gently. "Yes." Daniel stepped in from the porch, moving slower now that adrenaline had thinned. "He doesn't win either way," he said. He ran. He looked around my house, assessing it not as a cop now, but as a brother. "But you're not wrong. If you stay, you need better locks by morning, and you're not sleeping alone." "I'll stay," Maya said immediately. "No," I said, "you have your kids. They'll survive one night without me hovering." We argued quietly for a few minutes, voices low and tired. In the end, we compromised. I would stay. Daniel would sit in his car across the street for a few hours. Maya would leave her phone on loud and her porch light on. It felt like building a flimsy fence after a storm. When the house finally emptied and it was just me and Buddy again, the silence felt different than before. Not ominous, not charged, used. I walked through each room slowly. The bedroom window was closed now, locked. The unplugged charger lay coiled neatly on the nightstand where an officer had placed it after photographing the outlet. In the kitchen, the back door chain still dangled broken. I closed the door and slid a chair under the knob, the way people do in bad hotel rooms in movies. It wasn't elegant. It made a scraping sound against tile. In the living room, I righted the end table. The candle had left a streak of soot on the wall above it. I stood in the entryway for a long time, staring at the front door. The storm door's hinge had a small bend in it now from being yanked open too hard. A thin line of fresh scratch marked the frame where the box cutter had brushed it. I locked the deadbolt, then I tested it. Twice. Buddy followed me everywhere. He didn't bark anymore. He just watched. Around midnight, Daniel tapped on the front window. I let him in briefly so he could use the bathroom and grab a bottle of water. His face looked older in my kitchen light. "They didn't find him," he said quietly. I nodded. I hadn't expected them to. "They'll canvass tomorrow," he went on. "Pull traffic cams. Check that gas station, if that's even real." "Do you think it was?" I asked. He hesitated. The phone was real. That doesn't answer the question. He leaned against the counter, wincing slightly as he shifted his weight. Sometimes guys like that test houses. See who opens the door, see who reacts. The phone story is plausible enough to get you talking. And if I hadn't opened the door, he might have tried something else. The honesty was almost kind. Daniel left around 2 a.m. after promising to swing by at dawn. Maya texted twice to make sure I was awake. I wasn't sleeping anyway. At 2:17 a.m., my phone buzzed. The sound shot through me like electricity. I grabbed it before it could vibrate again. Person detected, front door. My breath stopped. I opened the clip. The porch was empty. The green detection box outlined the hinge side of the door. Nothing moved. I watched it 3 times, waiting for fabric, for a shoulder, for a shadow. Nothing. I checked live view. Empty porch. Street quiet. One car parked across from my house, Daniel S., still there, engine off. I sat on the couch with the phone in my hand and the bat on the floor beside me. It buzzed again at 2:22. Person detected, front door. Same thing. Empty porch. Detection box around that narrow strip of siding. I swallowed. Technology doesn't understand context. It doesn't understand fear. It understands patterns of pixels. Maybe the porch light flicker triggered it. Maybe the bent hinge cast a different shadow now. Maybe the camera's algorithm was overcompensating because I'd widened the motion zone. I stood and walked to the front window. I didn't open the door this time. I pulled the curtain back and looked carefully at the hinge side of the door, the place that had become a character in its own right tonight. It was empty, just wood siding and shadow. I let the curtain fall. Back on the couch, I opened the doorbell settings. I removed the widened motion zone. I drew it tighter, deliberately excluding that sliver of space. The app warned me again about missed activity. I ignored it. Then I turned off person detection entirely. Just motion, just packages, just the minimum. The house settled around me in small, ordinary sounds. The radiator ticked, the fridge hummed, Buddy's breathing slowed. Around 3 a.m., exhaustion finally did what fear couldn't. It dragged me under. When I woke, it was pale gray outside. Kind of morning that pretends nothing happened overnight. Daniel texted that they'd pulled surveillance from the gas station. There had been no report of a stolen phone. The ID Eric Nolan had shown me belonged to a real person, a teacher in Albany. His wallet had been reported stolen 2 weeks ago. The cracked phone found in my living room was registered to a prepaid number, purchased in cash. He planned enough, Daniel said when he stopped by later. Not perfectly, but enough. They would keep looking. That was the official line. By afternoon, a contractor had patched the ceiling hole temporarily. The broken hinge on the storm door was replaced. I scheduled a locksmith to install a reinforced strike plate and a smart deadbolt that sent alerts directly to the police if forced. Maya brought over soup. Her kids hovered in the doorway, curious and quiet. Life pressed back in around the edges. But that night, when I locked the door and sat on the couch, the house felt slightly different. Not haunted, not cursed, mapped. I knew now exactly where someone could stand to disappear from view. I knew how long it took for police to arrive. I knew what it sounded like when a brick hit a wall. I knew how quickly a leash could become leverage. At 8:14 p.m., almost exactly 24 hours after the first notification, my phone buzzed. I had forgotten I'd turned person detection off. It wasn't that. It was motion. Motion detected front door. I stared at the notification. Then I opened it. The porch appeared on my screen, empty. The welcome mat shifted slightly in the breeze. The green detection box hovered for just a second at the hinge side of the door. Then it vanished. I watched the clip again. Nothing, just porch, just light, just space. I set my phone down carefully on the coffee table. Buddy lifted his head and looked at me. "It's fine," I said, and this time the words were almost true. Almost. The shadows fade for now, but the stories never end. Don't forget to hit like, subscribe to Mia Horror Stories, and join our community of horror lovers. If you're hungry for more, check out the next video. Just remember, the scariest part is often the one you don't see coming.